meeting for June 16, 2025 at 6 p.m. If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, and indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so tonight we have a public hearing on the 2025 Connecticut Neighborhood Assistance Act Tax Credit Program. And I'd like to ask for a motion to open the public hearing on the 2025 Connecticut Neighborhood Assistance Act Tax Credit Program applications.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so public hearing is now open. I do have a public hearing sign-up sheet. And the first person I have on the sheet is Mike Payne. If Mike wants to come up. You have 3 minutes for public hearing to speak.
I will not take that.
Okay, we're timing you, Mike.
Go ahead. Hello, Mike Payne, 72 Holcomb Street. I'm here talking about the Neighborhood Assistance Act for the Simsbury Free Library. It's the yellow building on Route 10, the former public library for the town, but not the current public library. We need to do some renovations there, and that was the genesis for this request for the town to approve us for the Neighborhood Assistance Act so we can solicit businesses and frankly, instead of paying taxes to the state, they can donate to us and allow us to renovate the building down there, which is in need of some renovations. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, otherwise I think I've been about a minute.
Yeah, that was pretty good. All right.
Thank you.
The next person I have is Susan Messina.
Susan Messino, 41 Madison Lane. I'm here on behalf of the Grange in the Neighborhood Assistance Act. We have benefited from this program. Previously, we kind of inherited a broken old building about 14 years ago. And these little bits of money we've gotten from this grant program have been extremely helpful in replacing our windows and upgrading our heating and cooling and all kinds of energy efficiency. Just so that everyone knows, it's no cost to the town. It's a state program and our request is very small. We're not in competition with McLean's or the ambulance. Our applications are forwarded and then businesses who are C Corps can pick what projects they want to fund. I realized that I forgot to check a box on our application. At the end, it says, does this require an audit or whatever? And since our request is so small, it doesn't, and I forgot to check the no box. If it's over $25,000, the yes box should be checked, so I just wanted to make sure that that was correct, and I can send an updated one with the box properly checked, or ask you if you'd be willing to do that to make sure our application is accurate and complete. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan. Is there anybody else here for the public hearing on the Connecticut Neighborhood Assistance Act's Tax Credit Grant? Anybody else here before I ask for a motion to close the public hearing on the 2025 Connecticut Neighborhood Assistance Act Tax Credit Program?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, public hearing is now closed. Next up, we normally have public audience. We do have a sign-up sheet, so I'm gonna go by the sign-up sheet, and then if you're not on here and you decide you wanna speak, we do time people 5 minutes. We do try to cut you off, so please don't make us do that. We don't like to do that. Carolyn Clement is the first one on the list, if she'd like to come up.
Hi everyone,
Hello.
I'm Carolyn Clemens of 8 Bradley Road. And I'm here tonight as a longtime member of the Terriffill Village Association and also a longtime member of Trinity Church in Terriffill. And I've come tonight to support our friends and neighbors, the Manassas Church. So, when St. Bernard's closed in Terriffill, it was a very sad day for all the village. And it left sort of a heaviness in the community. And then our friends from the Manassas Church dropped in out of seemingly nowhere, and the doors opened and the lights came on and you could hear music coming out of the building, and it once again was a house of prayer and worship. There were children's programs happening on the weekends, and people being taken care of from inside and outside their doors. So I'm just here, I know you have a matter later on in your agenda about this church, and I hope that it can be resolved in a way that is beneficial to all and also a blessing to all. So thank you.
The next up is John Nagy.
So I'm John Nagy from 71 Winthrop Street in Terriffill.
Hey, John.
And I'm also here to speak on behalf of the Manassas Church. I was totally blessed and gratified when Manassas came to town, because they preserved the building with tremendous historic value. It's a real light in the village, and they've been a real light in the village. They've been wonderful neighbors. You know, when we had that big storm last year and all the trees came down all over town, and I'm out there cutting my trees, and who shows up but Manassas to help me trim my trees. I'm on the Memorial Day Parade Committee, and when we need parking, Manassas provides parking for the Memorial Day Parade. When the school needs parking for the carnival, Manassas provides parking for the carnival. So they're real valuable members of our community. They want to be valued themselves in our community. They want people to value them. So I do, many of us do. And with regard to the Terriffill neighborhood plan, they're very interested in the plan and how they can be part of that plan. So I say, God bless them, welcome to the village, and let's give them whatever relief they need.
Thanks, John. Next up I have Pastor Gregory Mendoza.
Well, I thank you guys all for taking time with us to hear us out. And basically, the groups here, they're gonna speak on my behalf. Because once I put the clergy clothes on, nothing is short with us. They told me before I got here, please don't say nothing. I'm not gonna say anything. But basically, I'm thrilled to be in Terriffill. It has been a pleasure all the years that I've been here so far. And there have been maybe a little hiccup now or misunderstanding. But I know we're gonna see light at the end of the tunnel. And it's truly for me a blessing to be here, and I'm here to stay by the grace of Jesus Christ. God bless you guys.
Thank you. Okay, so I have Yamira Milan. How did I say that?
So you said it correctly. I'm like, shots fired. I didn't know I was going first. Alright, well, I thought I only had 3 minutes, so I'm glad to hear there's 5 minutes, so that makes me feel a little bit better. Cause like my dad said, we like to talk, but I came with a prepared statement, so I'm gonna try to stick to that. First, thank you all for coming, thank you all for taking the time to add this to your agenda, we do appreciate it. And I'm gonna stick to this, cause if not, we're gonna go 10 different ways, okay? So, dear members of the Board of Selectmen, we, the undersigned representatives of International Movement Manassas Incorporated, respectfully submit this petition to request the abatement of property taxes levied against our property located at 5-7 Maple Street, which we purchased on December 30th, 2022 from the Archdiocese. And I know that John kind of made a mention to that earlier, correct? Our church is a 501c religious nonprofit organization that has held tax-exempt status since 1997. So although we are new to Simsbury, we are not new as a church, okay? Upon purchasing the property, we promptly contacted the assessor's office in January 2023 to notify them of our ownership and tax-exempt status. We specifically asked how to ensure that we would not be liable for property taxes for the upcoming year. We were instructed to wait until November 2023 to apply for exemption, and we were not informed of the implications of the grand list calendar or how the 22 grand list would affect our tax obligations. When we later received the tax bill for the 2022 grand list, we were surprised as we believe that we had acted timely and in good faith to notify the assessor of our exempt status. In November of 2023, we followed the instructions provided and submitted our exemption application. Despite providing full documentation, including IRS recognition dating back to 1997, we were asked to submit additional information that had not been required of other churches in Simsbury. We filed an appeal with the Board of Assessment Appeals in February 2024, which was unanimously approved. The board acknowledged that our documentation was more than sufficient, and our status as a tax-exempt organization was clearly established. Through the Freedom of Information Act request, our legal counsel discovered that no other church in Tarryville, Simsbury for that matter, have been required to submit the extensive paperwork or financials that we were requested to submit. In fact, all other churches in Simsbury were automatically granted exemption without being required to complete the same level of administrative procedure. Despite this, the town continued to pursue a collection of taxes for the 2022 grand list, including issuing threats of a tax lien on our property. And we received that letter, I believe it was around April of this year, or maybe May, I may be off. But we received that notice of a tax lien that it was gonna be effective, if I'm not incorrect, May of 2025. These actions have imposed unnecessary legal and administrative costs to our congregation, which operates solely to serve the spiritual and social needs of the community. In spite of these challenges, our church has remained a welcoming and engaged part of the Tarryville community. And I know that you heard that from some of the members, and we thank you for coming and for being here to support us. We have allowed community groups and residents to use our property and parking for events such as the annual Memorial Day Parade, services at Trinity Church, local funerals, and historical tours of the former St. Bernard's building. Many community members who grew up attending services at the church have returned to visit, and we have graciously given them access to see the historic interior.
Just 1 minute is left.
Okay, I'm gonna make it. I think I'm gonna make it to the finish line. Our petition is submitted under the authority of the Connecticut General Statutes 12-124, which permits abatements where taxes are manifestly excessive or more than justly due. We believe the taxes assessed to us for the 2022 grand list met the definition due to administrative confusion and inconsistent treatment. We respectfully request that the Board of Selectmen grant an abatement of all property taxes assessed to our organization for the 2022 grand list. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, good job, thanks.
I tried, I was a little nervous, but I made it.
You did really well.
Right on.
Okay, now I have Yomaris on.
Hello, everyone. Hello. My name is Ramadi, as they just said. I want to express my gratitude for including Manassas Church in today's agenda. As the Secretary and Treasurer of International Movement Manassas, I recently had the honor of engaging in a very constructive conversation with the town manager, Mark Nelson, along with Ishmael Mijang and John Nagy, and I would like to publicly acknowledge and thank him for his generosity and time. My purpose here today is to advocate for a church that I have been a part of for the past 2 decades. I have witnessed the positive influence our church has had, and from the outset, this ministry has dedicated itself to supporting individuals, families, and communities both within the United States and beyond. Since acquiring the church, once known as St. Bernard's, located at 5-7 Maple Street in Tarryville, we have experienced overwhelming support from the community, which we also have reciprocated with genuine warmth and enthusiasm. Although our church is known to serve the Hispanic and Latino community of Tarryville, one look at our Facebook page and you'll notice our doors are open to all. We congregate with the people from African American, Native American, Anglo-Saxon roots, every color and every nation. We as individuals may have our differences, and one thing remains the same: we are all created in the image and likeness of God. The bottom line is we are here to serve all who come into contact with us on church or outside of church grounds. Coming to Simsbury in December of 2022 was such a highlight for our ministry as a whole, and as you can only imagine how deeply disheartening it was to find ourselves in such an unusual predicament regarding the property taxes levied on this organization.
who has maintained good standing since 1997 without any interruptions. At times, we have sought answers and guidance, and we encountered a lack of responses and sometimes minimal support. But we sincerely appreciate the opportunity to engage in this dialogue, allowing us to address what appears to be an oversight or a technicality. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Reverend Taylor Albright. You're dressed for the call here.
Sometimes you gotta put those sweatpants away. So because the pastor and I suffer from the same issue of not having such length of time, I have prepared some remarks. So my name is Taylor Albright and I live at 11 Maple Street, directly adjacent to the property where the Manassas Church is. I am the rector of Trinity Episcopal Church in Tarryville and the chaplain of the Simsbury Police Department. This evening, though, I am representing the entire Simsbury Clergy Association, which includes First Church, Simsbury United Methodist, the Farmington Valley Jewish Congregation, Covenant Presbyterian, and St. Mary's Roman Catholic Church, in addition to Trinity Episcopal Church. Now, I'm here this evening to express our concern as the entire clergy group and our support for the Manassas Church, and to ask for your consideration for a settlement agreement regarding the church's tax appeal. Manassas obtained the property on December 30th, 2022. After being vacant for 5 years, the property was in need of a variety of repairs, especially after a burst water pipe had flooded the lower section for several days over 2 years earlier. Church members arrived from the Bronx and Connecticut and immediately began the work. But even while they worked to repair the building, the church began to hold regular services for prayer, for Bible study, and immediately began to reach out to the community in Tarryville. Manassas Church is unique in Simsbury as the only bilingual, bicultural church in town. Their outreach, meeting neighbors, especially in the Willow Arms housing section on Elm Street in Tarryville, showed that they were able to reach and minister to the needs of the community in ways that the rest of us had not been able to do. We at Trinity have been, maybe you'd say over the moon to have them as new neighbors. And from the time they arrived, Trinity and Manassas began to collaborate and share resources as they got ready for their more official public opening that happened on that Mother's Day. Manassas welcomed intentionally former St. Bernard's members, all kinds of curious neighbors, and certainly members of Trinity. Their local ministry immediately ratcheted up with kids programs, women's programs, weekend fairs. They have shared in town events, which you've heard, including the Tarryville Memorial Parade. They're involved with the fire department's Touch a Truck Day. They have been involved in the town-wide Thanksgiving services. And Pastor Gregory is a member of our clergy association. It's important to understand also that Manassas has a specialized outreach programs in East Haven, Connecticut, and in the Bronx, where members here in Tarryville travel to East Haven and back to New York and go into very stressed neighborhoods and host giant cookouts and food giveaways for some of the poorest of the poor. As a clergy association, we recognize Manassas to be unique and a vital part of our wider community. We are a bit confused over how a church that has had a 501c3 exemption could have been held liable for property tax, or how their appeal that they won last year would have waived 1 year and not another. Perhaps it was a filing mistake, perhaps it was a misunderstanding. But we, as the Clergy Association, hope, as churches and religious organizations ourselves, that this can be resolved so that we too may not have to worry about finding ourselves surprised from a tax bill. For any one of our churches and religious organizations, including every church and every religious community, a tax bill of the amount now pressing on Manassas would be a financial burden that would curtail our own ministries. Manassas has been a tremendous addition to Terriffill. We hope that tonight you will find a way to support their existence here in Simsbury. Thank you.
Thanks. The next person I have here is Reverend Denise Adessa.
You don't wanna speak?
I have to speak.
You don't have to.
Oh, okay.
I just have a question.
Oh, we probably won't address a question, only a comment, we'll just listen.
Oh, I mean.
Oh, for them, so. Okay, the next person I have up is Diane Nash.
I didn't sign it up, but I'm last but not least.
She looks so surprised.
I thought of
Right.
do a public event here. Tonight I really was here for the Hometown Hero Awards. The heroes who serve and leave a lasting positive impact on the town. Were honored tonight. Like you. They give it their time and effort and knowledge to make Simsbury a better community. An engaged public is the key to community. Better informed, more heavily involved, the better the community. It's why I speak tonight to add to the importance of sharing information and staying connected. Our town information site with meetings, agendas, and minutes recorded is a minimum requirement. But Simsbury has always been well above the minimum standard, encouraging attendance at town meetings, reading aloud letters sent to those unable to attend meetings. That has begun to change and should not. If the length of the meetings becomes a hardship on you, at a minimum, the letters should be attached to the minutes when they're submitted. They are in fact meant to be public. They're public audience letters. All meetings should be recorded. We have the technology to do so. If for some reason they cannot be streamed live, they must, again, at a minimum, be turned over to SCTV to allow viewing by the public. An open space meeting I could not attend, then could not access, even though I knew it was being recorded, has not been submitted to SCTV. Why? Is this a new policy? If so, I hope not. Many of tonight, as well as past hometown heroes, would like to stay engaged with the town. Many of us are physically, we're elderly, we're unable to attend the meeting. I have a hearing disability. I'll leave not because I'm not interested in what's going on. I have to go home and watch it on SCTV, closed caption. You got a lot of people you gave awards to tonight that, as you know, are handicapped. They can't attend these meetings. You've got to tape them. You've got to share the tapes, not the summary of what was said, but how it was said, the exchange. I certainly learned things tonight about this church I didn't know anything about. And I've been in town 58 years now. And this is new. We should all be engaged in everything that's happening in town. So please, keep SCTV going, keep us paying attention, keep us old and disabled people, keep us participating in what's going on in town. And I made it in less than my time.
Susan Messino.
Susan Messino, 41 Madison Lane. Diane didn't mention that she actually is a former hometown hero, so thank you, Diane.
So are you.
Yeah, you got it before me, so that was timely on their part. It's funny you mentioned the open space meeting. I wanna say nothing exciting happened. I don't think there's like a conspiracy not to put it on SCTV, but I agree with Diane that we should put everything we have. That's our historical archive for the town. Democracy requires an informed public, and we can't overemphasize that too much. The thing that I sent a very brief note this afternoon, the thing that I wanted to make you aware of, I know that tonight you're talking about the potentially putting housing on the 24 acres on Meadowwood. I didn't bring this up, it was actually Marjorie Winters who brought this up on behalf of Hartford Audubon many months ago, that the area of 24 acres that is currently unrestricted town land is basically one of the most important birding areas on the property. And I also found out it's very wet, and there's a lot of special species there, and it's very good farmland, that 24 acres. And Marjorie brought this to the Open Space Committee to say, look, this is really good farmland, environmentally sensitive land, and there's another piece of Meadowwood that's kind of sandy, the soil isn't good, it doesn't grow much, there's no birds. Let's talk about swapping these two pieces of land. And the question was, okay, can we do it because we have a restriction on that land based on the conservation easement that was put on it, etc. So there's been outreach to DEP, the Trust for Public Land, to find out if it was possible. It is possible. It's a very minimal cost, and we could even pay for it out of the open space budget if we had to. It's a few $1,000s. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but all I'm saying is if we're going to do something with 24 acres, let's make sure that we do it with the right 24 acres and not the environmentally sensitive, important agricultural land. And what I didn't know is actually Doug Beach, who's here tonight, he just introduced himself to me. I've never met him before. He's with Hartford Audubon. He actually did a full presentation about Meadowwood at a Hartford Audubon monthly meeting a few months ago. And I didn't know we have birds that are landing there from Greenland, from all over the place. This is like really special stuff we have in town. And you know, this is sacred stuff, and we have to make sure that we don't run over the wrong things. So thank you for paying attention to that. And Doug had mentioned to me at the beginning of the meeting that he wanted to speak, but he didn't put his name on it, so I just am providing you a piece of
He has to go on the end, so I'll put him
Okay,
at the
I'll put
end.
him on the end.
I'll put him here.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next I have Amanda
Oh, I didn't wanna speak, I just thought I was signing in.
Oh, thank you. How about Christy Bunn? Do you wanna speak?
Signing in as well.
Okay, oh, I love it.
You're on the wrong side.
Okay, so Doug Beach, you're up.
Go ahead.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Douglas Beach. I live at 138 Terry's Plain Road. I'm a native and two-time resident of Simsbury. I have a master's degree in landscape architecture from North Carolina State University. I have a bachelor's degree in environmental design from the University of Massachusetts. I'm well-versed and experienced in site planning. If you need further credentials, I spent my career as a professional golf course designer. I can show you this issue of Golf Digest, of Golf Week magazine, and of Links magazine, and I think they will verify my credentials as a site planner and as a golf course designer. I speak to you tonight with utmost respect. I am not here to rabble-rouse. I am here to advocate for the town of Simsbury. I would prefer to be elsewhere. However, what I have to say stems from my overwhelming concern about the future of Meadowwood. I hold in my hand a letter from the Trust for Public Land supporting an effort that I have advocated ever since the Meadowwood property was purchased. I plan to present this letter to you at a site visit that the Open Space Committee and Conservation Commission have advocated for several months. I have been aware of the 24-acre easement since the time that Meadowood was purchased, and it has always been my understanding that housing could be built within that easement. It is my fervent belief that this easement is in the wrong location, and I say this for several reasons. And the good news, incidentally, is that I believe there is a logical solution to this issue. My first concern is about aesthetics and politics. A photograph of the view from the southwest corner along Hoskins Road and looking east was printed in the New York Times when the town was contemplating the purchase of Meadowood. This is the public's perception of Meadowood, ladies and gentlemen. You will recall the petition that was signed by over 1,600 people in less than a week, and how a record number of citizens voted 85% in favor of preserving this property. I absolutely promise you there will be a furor in this town, the likes of which no one can imagine if that 24-acre easement is developed into housing or soccer fields or anything else. My second concern is in regard to practical aspects. The 24-acre easement sits in a depressed area, one that, in my opinion, will require substantial and costly steps to achieve positive drainage. I believe that significant quantities of fill material will be required to raise this area so that it drains properly. If I am correct, this fill material will either have to be imported or an excavation within the easement will have to occur. I perceive this as a significant cost regardless of the type of development that is implemented. My third concern is about the protection of the adjacent wetland that is located along the west side of Hoskins Road parcel, the area in which the willow trees stand. This wetland is probably the most ecologically sensitive area within the Meadowood property. I have other concerns that I would be more than happy to discuss with you at a time of your choice. In the meantime, there are other areas of the Hoskins Road parcel that, in my judgment, would be far better for development, not only from an aesthetic and political standpoint, but also from a practical and money standpoint. I've heard it said that there's concern that the state of Connecticut will create barriers and make any change a difficult and costly process. I've also been advised that, to the contrary, the state of Connecticut and especially the Department of Agriculture may welcome such a change if the soils in a different location are less desirable for agriculture. Please listen to what I am saying. The people of Simsbury overwhelmingly voted to save Meadowood as open space, and they agreed to pay $2.5 million of the $6.5 million price tag. Let's look at this easement carefully and methodically, for I repeat, there will be a furor in this town if the current easement is developed into housing or soccer fields or anything else. If my beliefs are wrong, I will stand corrected. I will come before you and apologize. However, I almost am certain that I'm correct.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Our timers are on.
Okay, go.
Is there anyone else here for public audience? Joan?
That was it, Joe.
Want me to go?
Joan Code 26 Whitford Drive. According to the listing in the law offices of Upton Kelly and Spellacy, Town Attorney Robert DiCrescenzo has been Town Attorney in Simsbury since 1998. 27 years as Town Attorney in Simsbury, DiCrescenzo has guided the town throughout the years. However, it appears that over the years, Attorney DiCrescenzo has served himself with additional responsibilities in other towns and providing services for the Silverman Group as a developer of housing with a development in Simsbury by representing the Silverman Group for development in East Granby, clearly a conflict. Town Attorney DiCrescenzo has been assigned to assist the Charter Revision Commission with legal opinion and required to attend the meetings. However, The recent meeting, Attorney DiCrescenzo, where his legal advice was necessary, left the meeting due to a conflict servicing another client. Another meeting was required to continue discussing the section on the duties of the town manager. As years went by, Town Attorney DiCrescenzo added more clients under his direction, leaving Simsbury with delays in action and conflicts requiring hiring outside attorneys. On June 5th, 2012, meeting of the Eno Farm Subcommittee was convened to vote for a change in the current lease. The minutes of the meeting states, quote, Attorney DiCrescenzo advised that the town is governed by the language of the ground lease that is clearly in place and it is specific. It is very clearly that section 3.1, low, moderate, was amended. Moderate does not apply today because it's been amended. It is now low, very low. To date, the town has not complied with the ground lease. Not only was Town Attorney DiCrescenzo aware of the violation of the ground lease over the years, he has not given guidance to the town to comply with the ground lease and allowed CHFA, the owner of the property, to continue to lease property to moderate income applicants in violation of the law. It is time that for another attorney to serve Simsbury. The Board of Selectmen can either initiate an RFP for a town attorney or provide a corporate counsel with an office in Town Hall. The contract of the corporate attorney could provide an additional service as a grant writer, adding revenue to the town. The residents of Simsbury approved a spending budget of $128 million with 1,001 residents voting, of 5.4% of the town's 18,453 voters cast a ballot. A low turnout allows special interest groups to dominate the voting process. Special education funding has taken the budget process hostage, leaving other expenditures eliminated or delayed with much needed maintenance unfunded. The Board of Education Facilities Master Plan stated that the 6th grade should be placed in the junior high. As a result of the failure of the Board of Education to implement this suggestion at the time of the renovation, in addition to the junior high is required to place an additional 400 students in the school. This suggestion was not initiated, and now the discussion continues as the elementary schools need more space, requiring redistricting. A prime example of maintenance delayed is the tennis pickleball courts at Henry James that has become a safety issue. Squadron Line School needs funding that has been postponed. As funding is delayed, the costs escalate, and increasing the expenditures to future budgets. Real Estate Holdings LLC, Nod Road, and Flaming Earth Products have not paid their taxes to the town. Real Estate Holdings LLC has an application before the Zoning Commission for a zone change, application CZ25 of Simsbury Real Estate Holdings. Applicant for a next amendment to the zoning regulation, Section 3, residential districts, and Section 17 definitions to allow an additional use special recreation area in the R40, R80, and 160 zones. Flaminger Farm Earth Products has a lawsuit against the town on a tax appeal. Both these businesses and others are in arrears, and their taxes are allowed to ask for special exceptions or expansions. A person cannot register with their motor vehicles if they have not paid their taxes. The town should follow the DMV and develop a policy restricting anyone from applying to the town for approval of applications or other related activities until they comply with town regulations. The Charter Revision Commission has been discussing the town manager form of government and has made suggestions that the Board of Selectmen have 4-year terms and continue with the first selectman elected separately. Before any action is taken, I would suggest that the Charter Commission review the Avon Town Manager Council form of government with 2-year terms and a chairman selected by the council members for Simsbury. The Avon Town Charter has served the town well over decades and is in keeping with other towns' manager form of government. All my comments will be posted on Simsbury Pat and Twitter at Joan Cole, and I post more things on Twitter at Joan Cole other than.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Joan.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time.
Yeah, is there anyone else here for public audience? Laurie? Oh, okay. Anyone else want making the list? Okay.
I am Lori Boyko from 15 Oakhurst Road. I want to echo what Diane Nash had to say about meetings being recorded and posted. There's at least 3 meetings going on that are overlapping right at this moment, and clearly none of us can be at all of them. I don't know that SCTV is the entire answer. There are challenges to that, but there's also Zoom options that make some of those things very easily done. So thanks, Diane, for mentioning that. Regarding the supplemental appropriation for library air conditioning replacement that you have before you tonight, I just have a couple of questions. You may have the answers. I'm just gonna ask them rhetorically. Have we explored all available sources of grants or other funds? The state library does provide construction grants for libraries under the category of energy conservation, which this may fall under. That may or may not be a possibility. There's also a special library fund that we get money from the annual state library grants. There's state aid payments and they're received April 30th of each year. In 2024, our library received $19,017. So we probably likely just received a payment and I don't know if those monies have been allocated yet. Pertaining to a new position for a food pantry assistant. Regardless of how it is being funded now, if we add this position with funds from the Darling Trust, when the trust money is exhausted, this will just be added to the taxpayers. You know it will, it always is. These positions never go away. The social workers that were added to the schools with COVID money, despite promises of no fiscal cliff, get buried into the budget, and then you all shrug your shoulders and claim fixed costs, nothing we can do about it. As it is, the Darling Trust provides $28,000 a year, some of which already goes to payroll for Wednesday lunches, and some goes to VNA, Meals on Wheels, and some resident assistance. In 2018, social services and seniors had 4.31 employees combined. In 2019, that number climbed to 5.71 employees. We're now at 6.31 FTEs. Our total budget between then and now for those combined departments has increased from $362,875 to $519,588. That's 43%. The wages over that period have risen in those two departments combined 47%. The wages and benefits are like around 90% of the department budget. Residents who are supportive of these departments think most of this money is going to people in need when it's really paying more and more staff. The proposal says we have 115 registered households. I don't understand why we spend so much social services money on more and more staff and only a minuscule amount goes to people in need. I also don't understand why the town owns so many buildings but pays the church to rent the space for the food pantry. None of this makes sense. Lastly, Connecticut state statute allows municipalities to tax for public purpose, which does not confer benefit to any one individual or small group of individuals. Economic development microgrants for AEDs, while maybe a valuable proposition, in private businesses is not what tax money is for. You can't just take taxpayer money that is supposed to be for economic development, with the idea being bolstering businesses to reduce the tax burden on residents, and instead switch that money to public safety. It's smoke and mirrors, it's bait and switch, it's deceptive, and it's wrong. Thank you.
Is there anyone else here for public audience? So the next thing that we do, I'm gonna make a couple agenda changes here. First, we talk about the consent agenda, so we move things to the consent agenda, so we pretty much put them up. I'm gonna ask for a motion. I have a couple of recommendations. I was gonna, recommend item A, and which is the neighborhood assistance, and item E, the parks foreman job description, to move those to consent along with A, B, and C in the appointments.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion on those? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The other thing I wanna do before I forget is add an agenda item, well, now it's not J, but agenda item J to discuss the donation from Simsbury Main Street Partnership to the end of the agenda.
So moved.
Is there a all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And then I would like to move up the item D, which is on the adjustment to the delinquent real property tax bill, to item A, so that if anyone's still here for that and they would like to, a lot of people just left. So that's their loss, but I was gonna move it to the top, so if you wanna stay through the Terriffill plan presentation, which would be appropriate, to move that to the top of the selectmen action.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, go Heather. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so somebody keep track of that.
Got it.
And then consent, okay, so now we have a presentation from our, on the Terriffill plan with George McGregor, our planning director, and assistant town planner Brittany. They have done presentations to other groups, but not to us. And this was one of our priorities over the few years on this board. So settle in, I guess.
Yeah, 15 minutes to zoning, so.
Madam Chair, Brittany's the George McGregor. Brittany's the project manager, has managed this project since the beginning and has really done a great job and has really established a great relationship with our friends in Terriffill. And so I'm gonna let her do that, and I'm double booked, so I'll stay for just a couple of minutes and then I've got zoning commission, so.
Okay, thanks, George.
Good lights. Tom, can you turn, just one? Yeah, there you go.
People wanna spread out, you can.
Do F4.
It's
Take it.
Oh, there it is.
do you want me to do the accessible reserve parking awareness while we're waiting? Why don't we?
Yes.
Let's do that. So we're gonna ask for so we have a proclamation here. I'd like to have the board do a quick read of it. If everybody could just take a line.
Yep.
Kevin, you wanna start?
Sure. Town of Simsbury proclamation, June as Accessible Reserved Parking Awareness Month. Whereas it's crucial to recognize that reserved parking spaces are not a privilege for the few, but a requirement for those with disabilities, and reserved parking spaces are not just a convenience, but a necessity for individuals with disability and mobility issues. And
whereas parking spaces are strategically located to provide easy access to public facilities, ensuring that those with mobility challenges can participate fully in society, these spaces often feature amenities such as wider access aisles and ramps to accommodate wheelchair users. And
whereas reserved parking spaces are a lifeline for people whose mobility is restricted due to various physical conditions, by designating specific reserved parking spots, society acknowledges the need for inclusivity and accessibility. And
whereas to promote fairness and ensure that reserved parking spaces serve their intended purpose, strict guidelines govern their use, and in the United States, the Americans with Disabilities Act outlines specific criteria for obtaining a reserved parking permit. And
whereas it's vital to respect these guidelines and not misuse reserved parking spaces, as doing so can result in fines and penalties.
Now therefore be it resolved, we the Board of Selectmen hereby proclaim June as Accessible Reserved Parking Awareness Month in Simsbury, and call upon all Simsbury residents to ensure that those who require reserved parking will be allowed to access them. And we've signed that and the proclamation is right here. So I'd like to ask for a motion effective June 16, 2025 to adopt the proclamation in honor of Accessible Reserved Parking Awareness Month as presented.
I'll make the motion.
Okay,
Second.
Any further discussion?
I would just like to make a note that and I did have this in communication, I would have preferred that throughout the proclamation, it included the word accessible before every reserved, because the meaning of reserved is very different than accessible parking. Formerly known as handicapped parking, it is now known more acceptable as accessible parking. And I don't want anybody to misunderstand that reserved parking is much different than accessible parking. So would strongly prefer the word accessible be at least in front of all the words reserved.
Okay. So if we make the motion with those changes, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. And Brittany's not here, so.
She's getting we have some computer update, she's getting a flash drive, so.
Okay,
Unfriendly.
I'll do a quick first selectmen's report, we're just trying to move along because we have a long night. That's okay with everybody? This will go out tomorrow, but I just wanna congratulate the class of 2025. We all attended the Simsbury High School graduation, and it was an honor as a member of the board to be sitting up on the stage. I did wanna give a thank you to the Board of Ed for inviting us to participate and to allow the 3 members of the Board of Selectmen with graduates, I think it might be a record of any board, to be able to see them up there presenting to Johnny, Macy and Risa was really just a touching thing, and it was just such a nice thing. So I want to thank the Board of Ed for letting that happen. The other thing is we did have the Hometown Heroes tonight. I'm not gonna go over that again. We will be scheduling a Simsbury Soccer Club public hearing hopefully later tonight. That's in here. The Flower Bridge ribbon cutting is Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. We've all been waiting for that to happen. And I do wanna announce that the pickleball courts in Terrafil are open and look gorgeous. And I guess from what Tom said, people are out there playing all day Sunday because it was a beautiful day, right? And you can make reservations online, because I would recommend that personally, so you can get there and make sure that you have your courts. And I'm gonna leave it at that, given the agenda, and see if Brittany's ready.
Sorry.
Oh, no, that's fine, we're moving along, we're getting stuff done.
Happy to go next, Chair, if you want me to.
Sure.
Great. Good evening, everybody. Thanks, Chair. Just a few things. I won't duplicate what the first selectman has said. But on town business, I want to thank our dispatchers collective bargaining union for their work during negotiations this year. On May 20th, after Board of Selectmen approval, Union President Susan Everest and I signed a new multi-year collective bargaining agreement with our public safety dispatchers, and I want to take this opportunity to thank all of them for their service to the community and in fact the region. On the PD side, our autism awareness traffic stop interview video is live. Say that 10 times fast. It'll be posted on PD's website. I think it's already up there, and on the town website as well. I want to thank Selectman Beal and Selectman Yaisley for their work on this issue as well, which has been something that everybody's been working on for the last month. As many in the public know, we just had a household hazardous waste collection pickup, but I've been asked to put it out there earlier so that people can make plans. So we're going to announce the next one now. It's going to be October 18th. So you can put it on your calendar now, and if you missed it on June 7th, the next one is October 18th, and we'll get more information published about that soon. Town Forest Park Pond Drawdown is another tongue twister. The pond in Town Forest Park will be drained in the next few weeks to allow for dredging to take place later this summer. The dredging work will prevent the pond from being choked by sediments and ultimately will improve water quality and the life of many species in there. The Eno Memorial Hall entrance improvement work is underway. Our first selectman had asked for an update on this for the benefit of the public. Work on the south side entrance at Eno began last week, and work on the construction of the new ADA accessible, thank you Diana, entrance will be completed this summer. Once that work is completed, the town will begin reconstruction on the parking lot, which is something that town staff and members of the public are eagerly awaiting. And then after that is the transitioning that's planned for Station Street from one-way to two-way traffic. So we're very excited about a lot of the goings-on over at Eno. I had the privilege of sitting with our first selectman for an interview on Wendy's After Hours with Wendy and Friends video, which was put on by SCTV. We heard a little bit about SCTV, just briefly on that, because we had some public comment on that about the recordation of a public meeting, which I certainly agree with that. Want to indicate that this board actually increased funding for SCTV marginally last for the budget year starting July 1. When I submitted the town manager budget, we asked for additional funding for SCTV, and we'll be continuing, I think, to support them and their operation with additional funding. I want to just briefly, in the interest of time, welcome to the town staff, Christine Camposano. Actually has already been with the town for a while, but is now taking on a new role as the assistant town clerk right across the hall in our town clerk's office. Many of you know Christine. She's worked for the town of Simsbury for over 6 years, and she brings a wealth of knowledge about the town from her positions. She used to work in building, and she also worked in the tax office for a while. So thanks, Christine, for taking that promotion and opportunity as the assistant town clerk. The summer reading program for all ages begins today, the 16th. Visit the library website or stop into the library for more details. There are 25 businesses that are financially supporting the library's summer reading program. We heard a little bit about the library budget also in public comment. I encourage anybody who listens to those comments to go on the library website and see the wonderful programming that's going on every day at one of the best libraries in the state of Connecticut, if not the country. Culture, Parks, and Recreation. Construction on the long-awaited Terriffill pickleball court is done, and as First Selectman said, it's open, but what she didn't say is that she was playing, and I think
I only played for a second.
I think we have a video to show of the First Selectman on the Terriffill pickleball court.
We'll get it on the screen.
If we can get it on the screen. We're having technical problems, so thanks very much for that. And the last thing is from my own office, and I usually give everybody the kudos here, but I want to just mention my own deputy who's sitting over there, Tom Fitzgerald, and I wrote these remarks very early in the morning, but let me just say he was recently elected treasurer of the Connecticut Town and City Manager Association, CTCMA, by his peers at their annual meeting last week. Tom has been on the executive board of CTCMA for over a year as an at-large member, and he's now going to serve as their treasurer. We do make an effort here in town government to support continuing education and opportunities like this for all of our town employees, and we want to thank Tom for giving a little bit of himself to a great organization that supports municipal government throughout the state of Connecticut. That's all I had, Chair. Thanks.
Are you ready, Brittany?
I'm ready.
Okay.
And on cue, we are ready to go.
I apologize about that. I'm Brittany McGilpin. I'm the assistant town planner. Thank you for having me tonight to present this exciting plan for Terriffill Village neighborhood. The idea of implementing a Terriffill planning study was first discussed in the recently approved Simsbury POCD, Plan of Conservation and Development, which identified Terriffill, among others, as a village center to emphasize its sense of place. Specifically, guide future growth or change in Simsbury in ways that will promote places with a sense of place, strengthen Simsbury Center and other village centers, and unique places, and maintain and enhance the ambiance of the community. Terriffill was the first village to be undertaken, and funding was allocated by the Board of Selectmen for a special study in your fiscal year 24 and 25 budget cycles. After a selection process with the Planning Commission, SLR was selected as our consultant to help assist in the creation of the study. They created a robust community outreach plan, which began in August 2024. It included stakeholder meetings where we met with members of the Terriffill Neighborhood Association as well as environmental advocates to get their initial thoughts on what they would like to see within the plan. We also created the community survey. The flyer you see on the right was mailed to each property owner in Terriffill. We received 371 responses, 19.7% of the Terriffill population participated, which is great.
Very.
There were 2 community workshops, one in September 24 where we provided a timeline and implementation strategy for the plan and received feedback on the main themes that we saw from the survey. And 48 attendees were at that meeting. In March 2025, we had 58 attendees, and this one was when we presented our draft recommendations. We also attended a number of planning commission meetings, and we also had a project website, which was a GIS story map. So community feedback was collected, analyzed, and SLR translated them into the following topics. These were 4 recurrent topics that stood out from public feedback. It was pedestrian experience and connectivity, roadway circulation and traffic, outdoor recreation and natural resources, streetscape character and architectural aesthetics. A site analysis map, which you see on the right, was created for each topic area, which helped visually describe all the comments received. I thought this was a great aspect of the plan. You could really see, you could correspond the comments that you see on the right to where it is in the neighborhood, and that was extremely helpful. After the public gathering phase, we worked on creating recommendations for the study. The first step was to create a vision statement that captured what the community felt was important for Terriffill and how they felt the study should be guided. Theme areas were also created so as to categorize the feedback received, and the 4 categories included village character, outdoor recreation, multimodal connectivity and safety, as well as economic vitality. I'll go through each one briefly. The first theme is village character, and these are recommendations such as updating gateway signage, which you'll see on the lower right, the first picture, improve the streetscape experience, create unique signage, wayfinding and branding for the village. Also develop a unique village district zone, and this can include amending parking requirements for the zone, as well as including unique sustainability and environmentally appropriate guidelines. Also create style guidelines, a focus on property maintenance and beautification efforts. Theme 2 was called outdoor recreation and included recommendations such as improving river access and views. There's specific call out of locations within the plan, and also make public and viewing access points to the river, create more usable trail networks, and improve upon parks and open space. The third theme is multimodal connectivity and safety, and that includes things like improving pedestrian facilities such as sidewalks and creating crosswalks, and also increasing ADA accessibility. Also, one of the very common feedback items we received was traffic in Terriffill, especially along Route 189 and 315. So one of those recommendations was to explore traffic calming measures, which includes preparing a traffic study for the village. And the last theme is economic vitality, and that is what's included is promoting local economy through zoning changes and marketing, identify economic development groups for support, and identify areas that can be used for public parking as well. And also expand outdoor recreation, not just locally, but also regionally, to attract more visitors to this unique and beautiful area. Last and most important step is the implementation plan. We have a number of recommendations that were made, but the priorities and our cost considerations have not been identified yet. So our next step in the coming weeks is for planning staff to work with other town staff, the community, and leaders on levels of priority for the different recommendations. And also staff will continue working with the Board of Selectmen on available funding opportunities. The below is an example from the POCD, which has a great implementation plan that we tried to mirror off of them. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. I'm just gonna open it up for questions for Brittany. I have a couple. Sure. And you know, I like the picture you showed with the crosswalks, the yellow bumps, the speed bumps and everything, but some of the difficulty obviously is that there's a couple state roads there.
Yes.
So we have to work with the
Yep.
state.
We do
We
have to
already
work
have
with the
that issue on the corner, which no one's thrilled about, so I'm sure that will be addressed.
Yep.
One of the things I talked to Mark about to talk to the chief about is even, you know, putting in a note through truck sign, whether that works or not, but to just potentially, I'm sure that's come up in some of the conversations.
Another unique idea was to work on what MapQuest, what truck drivers and other drivers use to access Terriffill. That's included in the recommendations to kind of see how if we can update that as well.
Okay. And then you know, just to keep the Board of Selectmen obviously looped in, because if there's any funding, it's gonna have to come to us probably in the CNR or something like that, which, you know, we need to be looped in on that going forward. But yeah, like is there an end time frame that you see?
There's not this, during the implementation plan, we're gonna think of, the categories are gonna be near term, short, medium term and long term. So this is gonna be a document that's for the future. There are gonna be some, you know, quick wins that we'll be able to identify, but it's not gonna be, there's no time limit to it, but it'll be several years to, you know, get all of these things.
So like an open living document.
Exactly.
Okay.
So
exactly.
Did you wanna say? I was just gonna say, Heather and I were on the board originally when we pushed the emphasis on this plan for Terriffill. And it would be nice if you guys came back to us on a somewhat regular basis to give us updates on what's going on. And if you want us to weigh in on anything, we'd be happy to provide context on that. So, anything else?
I have a question, although I would like to say at the planning meeting when this was presented, a number of Terriffill residents were there and it was very well received, so they seemed happy with the work that was done on it. I guess my question is, was there anything that really stood out as being a consistent sort of like one of the particular themes? Did one thing really stand out as something that you heard time and time again? And when we look at the implementation of it, and the costs, were you able to identify sort of, you know, if we start here, then that could help us with this area?
Right. So to answer the first question, it's hard to pinpoint one. I know major themes were Terriffill Park and making that more accessible to the river around it, and just general accessibility to the river. Traffic was also very high up on the list of what they want us to tackle. So that's the traffic study will be important, I think, in the future of it. But then, you know, marketing also. So I mean, you're right, there has to be a sequence of how things occur to get the most like efficient funding for it. Yeah. And so that will definitely be something that we'll be discussing at the implementation stage of it.
Thanks.
I have a quick question. Do you have a timeline to start the implementation? You know, you're looking at timelines?
Yeah, we hope to accomplish it in the next few weeks. I mean, the implementation plan should be done as soon as possible. We are gonna, the plan will be adopted hopefully next week, but we will be bringing the full implementation back and be, you know, swapping it out so it'll be available.
Also, are there projects that you could identify that would be possible for grants and funding outside of the taxpayers?
Yes, excellent, yeah. Throughout the report, there are areas that have the SLR helped us identify grant opportunities that we can look more into, so that'll definitely be an important funding source for the plan, yeah.
And I would just add, having the plan supports that grant application, as you know, so we're excited.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna ask the Selectmen liaison and committee reports to try to just give critical updates so we can move forward. So Curtis, do you have anything to provide?
So zoning's meeting now, so
Okay.
nothing zoning. Police, there was nothing really going on, nothing new. So I'm gonna end it there.
Okay. Heather?
I just have a few public safety items. So Mark and I attended the annual Eversource meeting in Hartford, and we were able to receive a lot of updates just on how we would manage power outages and general information and updates. just for residents, if you come in contact with a down wire and what to do. And that's something that hopefully we can get added into our next public safety newsletter. Our next public safety meeting is on Wednesday morning. We do have our quarterly newsletter that we've been putting out, and we are actually for the first time going to have some paper copies that come out that we'll have at the senior center, Geisler's, and hopefully a few other locations. So hopefully that's more provides better access of it to our residents. Additionally, on May 28th, the town of Simsbury hosted a cybersecurity tabletop exercise that included neighboring towns. It was sponsored by CISA, which is the Cyber Incident Situation. Okay, now I have to get up. I thought I was remembering it. But it's a part of the Department of Homeland Security, and we ran through cyber incident response situations. It was really good opportunity for us to drill down and locate areas of vulnerability and where we can look to strengthen. But the CISA website has several resources for individuals as well, several on monitoring kids and just cyber safety in general. So it's a really great resource. I attended the Main Street part, or the ambulance monthly meeting. And one, I would like to say congratulations to Dave Harriman. He was recipient of the EMS Champion Award. Additionally, there's an accelerated EMT class that's running from July 1st to August 2nd. And just some data on the month of April for the ambulance. They responded to 224 calls. They had 158 transports. They had 25 calls in for mutual aid, and they had 18 calls out. So their next board meeting will be next week for their May data. But that's what I have for public safety.
Thank you.
The only one thing I want to add to public safety that I just found out today, actually tonight here, and we can talk about it on Wednesday, is apparently CNG keeps cutting gas lines in the south end of town, and the fire department keeps getting called there, just an FYI.
Before you dig.
Put that on tomorrow, you could bring that up tomorrow.
Yes.
Or Wednesday.
Nothing to report
Okay.
from my boards.
Board of Ed, again, congratulations to the class of 25, and we have a meeting tomorrow. Heather covered public safety. For culture, parks and rec, there is an ice cream social on July 2nd, along with a community band concert, and a whole series of community band concerts is posted on the Parks and Rec's website. The pool is open, and golf is up and running. For the Aging and Disability Commission, we do have a disability picnic on July 19th. We were awarded an AARP grant for $2,500 for an Aging in Place Expo with Home Fit, which will be taking place in September, but it was very exciting that the grant that we approved to apply for, we did receive. And then, as mentioned previously, there is a traffic stop practice for people with disabilities this Saturday, fostering positive relationships between first responders and people with autism. It is from 9 to 1 this Saturday at Westminster. The police will be given information on how to respond to people with autism at a traffic stop, as well as drivers who have autism, and passengers who have autism can practice having traffic stops so they know what to expect and keep everybody safe. For Simsbury Matters Performing Arts, the concerts for Tuckahoe Mountain Music Festival start June 27th, and prior to that, June 21st, it's the Let's Sing Taylor Swift concert. Well, not Taylor Swift, but Let's Sing Taylor, the Taylor Swift concert. For fair rent, there was a settlement in a complaint against Fish Enterprises that was reached in a conference on June 4th, and that's it.
Thank you. Kevin?
I'll just say congrats to the library and DEI Council and other volunteers for the picnic that they held last Thursday in honor of Pride Month. It seemed very well attended, and the music was great, and it was a great community gathering there. And unfortunately, the weather on Saturday didn't help the Juneteenth celebration. Had to move inside to the high school, but that also seemed like the party was still rocking over there, and a good event and a quick change by the small number of volunteers there. And I'm glad at our agenda tonight we were able able to appoint new members for the DEI council because they're a volunteer-led group and they needed it. And just a point of personal privilege, I attended a flag retirement ceremony on Saturday put together by some of the local veterans groups right by the Weetock Fire Station. There's a special platform for that. And there was a Simsbury resident who brought her late father's Marine uniform to be retired there as well. It's not a common thing that I see these days, but it was a very nice and touching thing. And many thanks to the VFW and the Legion for doing that. They collected bags and bags of flags to be properly retired there, and it's sort of a thankless but proper task to retire the US flag, and so I was appreciative of them doing that. That's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just mention one other thing?
No, you
It's
already
very
did,
quick.
Diane.
Is it urgent?
Yes, it is.
Oh.
You will appreciate this.
Okay.
The Theatre Guild of Simsbury is doing the musical Spelling Bee opening this weekend, and I just wanted to note that our first selectman, Wendy Maxidis, will be the guest speller on June 21st.
Oh, this was worth it.
So please go see the show where Wendy will be on stage as a guest speller. It is a musical and very, very funny.
We should better luck than Dan Quayle at that.
That's why it was urgent, Wendy.
Wendy, one more thing. I just want to say, I want to say record, congratulations to the Simsbury lacrosse, women's lacrosse
Yes.
team.
Oh, yeah.
And the
Very
state
good.
championship on Sunday.
Okay. And I'm not a very good speller, so.
She's supposed to be kicked off at some point, just for.
So, well, let's get into selectmen action. So the item that we moved to the top of the bill is to approve an adjustment to a delinquent real estate property tax bill pursuant to Connecticut General Statutes 12-124. So I'm just gonna give my little preamble here, and I'm gonna let Mark kind of just set the stage. This was an issue, it's gone through the channels that it needed to go through, and that was found that there's a statute 12-124 that allows the selectmen to abate the interest and taxes based on criteria. And then that will go on to the OPM in the state, okay, so that's our only role in this. What I understand prior to this is it's been described as a phantom tax bill because it was in between the transition from the prior owner to the new owner. And it was changed from non-taxable to taxable when it went on the market. And basically, technically, there's no administrative way to tweak that and correct it without going through some sort of legal channels. So I'm gonna let Mark give a little background on that, and then I'm gonna propose a motion for the board.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks to members of the public and the applicant that are here tonight. I'll try to be brief and certainly happy to take specific questions, but let me just frame this in a I think to me, and just for the record, I was Hartford's tax collector for 8 years, so I have some experience when it comes to municipal taxes. I'll just say, as I told our first selectman in conference, this is an extremely uncommon situation where this phantom tax bill survives after a change of ownership. In my 8 years in the state's capital tax office, I've seen this happen once. And in my 8 years working in New York State, I saw a similar thing happen with the Catholic Church. One required state enabling legislation to fix it, the one in New York. Here, we propose to the Board of Selectmen a rather interesting solution. But let me set the stage. The church in Manassas, we appreciate everything that you've done, and I appreciated the time you spent with me a couple weeks ago as we started to frame this discussion. It's clear that at the closing, you knew it was taxable because the closing statements show that what was left from the grand list of 2021 was paid at the closing, and the attorneys saw that there was some taxes due because the former church was not using the property as a church, and so the town assessor had assessed it as a taxable entity. And so even though it was exempt for some years, it was now taxable, and it was taxable when you purchased it. And the attorneys on both sides of that transaction knew it. And I just want to put that on the record, so I'm not pointing fingers or fault. I will say to you what our town attorney told me, that he's seen this happen very rarely. And it is, I think, a function of the closing lawyers, particularly with tax exempt entities, to realize that this could happen. In fact, our town attorney warned me that it might happen with respect to Two Farms Village Road as we take that purchase off the tax roll. So just wanted to set that stage. Very quickly, secondly, years ago, the state legislature saw this as a problem with respect to blind individuals who don't get the certification of blindness to the assessor in time. They get it there for the following year, and the assessor says, okay, you're exempt because of blindness. There previously was no provision in state law to let the tax collector go back to the prior grand list and also get rid of those taxes that were there. The legislature also fixed a loophole in that same statute, which is 12-127, with respect to our veterans. And so it's exactly the same story. I think the state legislature realized that there were exemption transactions that would leave that orphan tax bill, in this case, the second installment of 22, I believe, actually all of 22, out there. And so what's interesting to me is we did the research with the town attorney, and really what made me decide to support it and bring it forward was that clearly our state leaders knew that this was a problem with respect to exemptions. So that, put a pin in that, we'll put that over there for a minute, and then we'll turn to what the proposal is for the board tonight. 124 allows the board to recommend to the Secretary of OPM, a state agency, as you know, that the taxes and or the interest or the principal or both be abated in the case where the taxpayer is found to be poor and unable to pay. And that is for OPM, that is going to be the real criterion. And that's what I think we'll get some questions from the board on tonight. So all of these other things that we've heard are very important in terms of background, which we've provided to the decision makers. But ultimately, the statute is quite clear that it has to be somebody has to make that finding that that the taxpayer is poor and unable to pay. The last thing I'll say on that subject is I think we heard from a couple of the members of the public who spoke, I think clergy members who spoke in favor of this, indicated how difficult a $19,000 tax bill would be for any entity in this position. And so I'm here today to recommend to the board that I've certainly reached a conclusion that this would have an impact. But the board has obviously to make that decision, and then ultimately OPM will do it. I just want to say, as the town attorney instructed me to, that no one individual, the tax collector, the tax assessor, even the town manager, no one in town government has the authority to waive the taxes, even in a case where there's unfortunately a loophole that created this. And with that, I'll turn it over to questions. Thanks for that opportunity, Chair. I thought, and I do want to indicate that, this is extremely unusual and rare. And for me, it's not based just solely on the poor and unable to pay, but also on the specific circumstances of this case. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, so I do have a motion to put out on the table, but I would like to see if you have questions beforehand.
I have a question, is there any definition of what constitutes poor, or is that completely subjective?
It's completely subjective, and the town attorney looked at this. I think the statute goes back to the late 1800s, and the term poor was not defined. Bigger cities have standing abatement committees. Hartford had one that would take up issues like this, and anything which was poor. And so if you have a standing abatement committee, as Hartford does, you could craft policies that would define it. Here, Simsbury doesn't have a standing abatement committee, and we have nothing on the books that would define it, and state law doesn't define it. What Mr. DiCrescenzo suggested was that we apply what we call a reasonableness test. Is it reasonable to believe, based on the documentation that we will get or the verbal assurances that we've received, that this would pose a hardship? And I think the answer is yes, but there is no specific guideline that says a certain amount of assets and you're not poor. Unfortunately. It's subjective.
Is there any other questions before I put out a proposed motion?
So the statute not only says poor, it says and unable to
Yep.
pay. So I think that that's the word or the words that I would focus on versus the specific definition of poor here. I do have a concern about using this and going to OPM. But the motion that we're being asked to vote for doesn't reference that statute or that solution. It's just referencing an administrative fix. And so
I have an altered motion to include
okay,
that.
then I think that that's worth discussing. I do think that that's a potential issue for us to cite this as the statute that we wanna use to solve this issue. I think that there may be other ways. We get appeals and we've discussed them because businesses have argued the value of their assessment, and we've reduced both the assessment and the bill that they have to pay. And I think that this board is empowered with that, regardless of the statute, of making that judgment to resolve a conflict which we are currently in. We're in a conflict because we've heard an appeal. The Board of Assessment Appeals has heard this issue, and we are now hearing this appeal. So I think that there's flexibility for us to be able to solve this problem, but I have a concern about this specific statute being used for this. I'm not the town attorney, he's smarter on statute than me, but as I read it, I think it may be not exactly applied as was intended when it was written. I also don't see any reason why a church that wasn't taxed, that's now owned by a church that shouldn't be taxed, should have a tax bill. So if we can solve this, it seems like in the end, we're doing the right thing overall.
So I will turn that back to Mark, because the way it was presented to the board on our agenda is that this is the only way to enable this waiver for this period. And that's how I was presented it, and that's how I understand it.
What's your modified motion?
Yeah, if
Let me put the motion out there,
Put the motion
okay?
out there if you would, because to Kevin's point, the motion that the first selectman's gonna present, I think does solve that.
And I did ask for help from the town attorney, because I had the concern that we were making the waiver based on a statute but did not have proof of the statute. And so I included in the motion, the burden of proof falls back to the town manager to meet that criteria, and subject to that, we would approve it. So here's the wording. A motion effective June 16th to approve an administrative waiver of property taxes and interest, subject to the town manager receiving and providing to OPM and the Board of Selectmen documentary evidence of the conditions stated in 12-124 related to the role of the selectmen in this matter, given the unique set of circumstances and facts related to International Movement Manassas Inc., St. Therese Parish Corporation, a nonprofit religious organization, and if met, to forward this to OPM for a decision.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, is there more
just have a-
discussion on that?
I have a clarification. You did point in there that they are a registered 501c3 organization?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I think by that definition, in many ways, non-for-profit would also fall under the category of unable to pay and poor, because the whole point of being nonprofit is to not make profits, and you sit in areas of very, you operate in the margins. So and I also just wanna go on record and saying welcome to town, and we are thrilled to have you here, and I hope the board, you feel from the board that we all welcome you here.
Thank you.
And this is something that we had not known until just recently, so.
Thank you, we appreciate it.
If I could answer Selectman Beal's question, so I did check with the town attorney on alternate means to accomplish the same goal. There are two that are more convoluted and challenging than these. If you'd like, I'll describe them.
Please.
One would involve the assignment of a delinquent tax lien on the property to them, essentially, or to a third-party trust that they established. Under state law, the Board of Selectmen could assign it for $1. Or any amount, it shows less than the tax. And then having assigned it to them, they could discharge it and file a lien release. This is a circular route to extinguish taxes. It's typically used, it's extremely rare. It's typically used in development cases where the property has been long abandoned and the taxes have accrued to be 3 times what the property is worth. And even in a case like that, as would be the case with, say, a brownfield development or something, there is no provision to allow a board to do it otherwise. And so some communities have done that. And then the last alternative is that you would just don't enforce the taxes, and after about 7 years, they'd come before the board for the annual movement. It's called a movement to suspense, where every year the Board of Selectmen moves the unpaid taxes to the suspense list. But the problem with that is it would show as unpaid for all of those years, and so we discounted that as well. I think the equities suggested this recommendation for your consideration tonight. I don't like the lien assignment process. I never really did under these circumstances. So again, the issue for us is working with the church to make sure that we have received documentation sufficient to hit that poor and unable to pay threshold that OPM is gonna be looking for.
Does OPM tend to, is it more a formality or?
I cannot say I've ever known of them to approve a request because I've never heard of them getting one. It is so rare that a tax exempt organization buys a property from another tax exempt organization that lost its tax exempt status. The case in New York had to do with COVID and the church had closed and there wasn't any provision to give them an exclusion. So I think it won't be a first for OPM. Hartford never had to go that route because it has a standing abatement committee. And so under the statute, if you have a standing abatement committee, you don't need to go to OPM.
Can we form an abatement, not this in the future, would we be able to form an abatement committee consisting of the Board of Selectmen for this purpose?
I'd have to defer to the town attorney. I would recommend that electeds not serve on an abatement committee because not so much of conflict, but I certainly couldn't imagine wanting to be in that position of having the potential authority to abate taxes when you're holding elected office. I believe the abatement committee in Hartford is appointed.
How long would this process take once things are submitted to OPM?
I'm gonna give the church a week or two to get me the documentation that we're gonna work together to get, and assuming everything is good, we'll get a certified copy of the minutes of this meeting from the town clerk, and we can get a package to OPM within 2 weeks.
Yeah, I guess.
Afterwards, I think.
I have a quick question for you.
Yeah.
If OPM comes back negative, do we have additional steps that we can take?
Just the 2 I described. I don't know of any
So
other
we
way
can
to
still do those other 2 steps?
So,
You could.
yeah, and then in the meantime, I guess also my concern is OPM coming back as a negative, but also in the meantime, while this is in process, are they accruing further interest and taxes that on top of what we're looking at here, and how are we addressing that?
They are. There is no provision in state law for the tax collector or the town manager or the board to toll the accrual while a decision is being made. So the interest is continuing to accrue at it's 1.5% a month charged on the first of every month. But I don't know how long OPM would take. Certainly, I think I can speak for the tax collector that the town doesn't envision doing anything pending an answer. But we need to get the minutes of this meeting, assuming the board acts favorably, and we need to work with our friends at the church to get the documentation necessary to push this forward.
Okay, so I'm gonna call for a vote. The motion's on the table. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so that passes. So Mark will be working on that with the church. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Father.
Really hope this goes through.
Thank you guys.
Thank you for your time again and for everything.
Thank you.
We wish you, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mark, if we could, before we close this, what are we doing to make sure this never happens again?
That's a great question, Selectman. I was thinking, and with your permission, we'd have to think about this, but in the cover letter to OPM describing the circumstances, and I gotta support the poor information, right? I could indicate that this has been a loophole in state law for some years and recommend that OPM refer it to the legislative committee for a legislative fix. They probably want to get an opinion from the Connecticut Tax Collector Association and others, but if this board wants me to do that, I'd be happy to do it. This should be fixed in state law. I would say for the record, if OPM doesn't approve it, it's simply because they don't agree that they're poor. We haven't seen that documentation yet, but yeah, they're a nonprofit, so I'm hopeful.
I'm just worried about it ever happening again. It seemed a little overzealous for the months we got taxed.
They couldn't do anything about it, the assessor and the tax collector.
All right, I'm gonna move on. I think, Adam, are you here for item B, I hope, because otherwise okay, so we have received a recommendation for a supplemental appropriation to move to the Board of Finance on the library main air conditioning unit. Would you like somebody go through this? Basically, do you wanna do this? Do you want me to do it?
Either way, works for you.
You're here, you might as well. I'll give you the floor.
Yeah, so basically, we're during the look at the coils and the planned maintenance on that air conditioner unit that is the main unit for the library. It was discovered there was an extensive leak in the coils. The pricing for that repair also requires replacement of the compressor unit as well. So that ends up being about a $26,000 repair to the unit. The unit itself is 19 years old. I think we're usually pretty happy with that type of life on a air conditioning unit. Certainly one from, after 2000. I feel like we all have that old yellow fridge that keeps pumping along in the garage and your new one dies quickly. So what we're recommending is an additional appropriation so that we can replace the entire unit. And most of that is because it's a main unit in the library. So total cost for that is just over $60,000. So I believe we're asking for an additional appropriation of $22,500. Gives us a little bit of wiggle room. And we'll use the full value of the CNR budget item for $40,000 in addition to that.
Question.
So this is everything, right? Cause compressor and coils, that's pretty much the unit.
Right, and I think that's part of that decision.
So but we're not leaving something like a little 2% on the table that could break that's 20 years old.
No, I think it's replacement of the whole thing.
Comprehensive.
Yeah.
Just making sure, never assume.
I would imagine that by replacing it, being as old as it is, that there's some efficiency to reap the benefit of in that, but I guess my question is, with it being so close to the end of the year, rather than a supplemental appropriation, are there year-end savings for it?
Well, we know that there's gonna be year-end savings. We did check, the first selectman asked that question too, in a slightly different way. We got the finance director involved in this, and Amy's point was that for now, just out of expediency, we say cash reserves would be the funding source, and then we'll circle back. The Board of Finance will weigh in on this in terms of ultimately, moving the money around, and maybe year-end savings is a better choice than ultimately, whatever you don't spend out of year-end savings is going back into capital reserves anyway, so.
There's gonna be a payback.
We'll let them, Amy can handle it with the Board of Finance. If this board is gonna recommend it to them, that'd be fine with me.
I had a quick question, Adam. So if you did just the repair, the $26,000, right? How long would that last? Would it last till?
I think that's one of the big unknowns.
Okay.
And why we would suggest replacing the whole unit is you're not quite sure when the next piece of that equipment's gonna fail.
And what does this mean? So I look back at the the budget item, but it does say we're deferring the other work, the VAV replacements that was originally included, which means we're gonna need money for that next year, correct? And what is that?
The VAV replacements, I'm not the expert on.
Well, it said they're being deferred.
We are gonna defer it, I think for a future item.
Because it was supposed to be part of the 40K.
Right.
But we don't know what that costs, but that's gonna be another ask down the road, right, in a budget. I don't even know what a VAV replacement is, if anybody is
I think it has to do with the cold air.
So it's the part of the unit that discharges cold air, but I don't know
It's
it.
the opposite of this board.
Yes.
Wow, very good.
But if you're getting a whole new AC unit, wouldn't that be part of it?
No, those exist somewhere else in the system.
Okay.
And we do have like routine maintenance and replacements of those VAV units throughout all of our facilities. Those will, occasionally fail and we replace that one. That's much easier to do than, let's say, a whole compressor and
Okay, well, just be prepared for us to maybe not approve the VAV thing.
Well,
In
I'm
the
dealing with
future.
this in my office too. There's a difference with what the system is charged with too. Is that also an issue, the actual coolant that's being used? And so upgrading this entire system is more economically viable because replacement parts for the older system won't be available. Is that what we're dealing with also?
I believe that's part of it too. A unit of that age is using that different coolant.
It's bittersweet, the new ones have less of a life because they run on
Yeah,
propane.
yeah.
The VAV is it does the different zones. So if one wing is higher than the other, it just pumps the air there, it's the switch.
Okay,
It tells it the route to go.
okay, thank you.
So it's not, it's totally separate from the air conditioner.
What does it cost?
No,
I just
according to
Googled
this.
Okay, okay, so I'm just gonna ask for a motion effective June 16, 2025 to approve a supplemental appropriation for the purchase of a replacement air conditioning unit at the Simsbury Public Library in the amount of $22,500 and to recommend this to the Board of Finance.
So moved.
Second.
Just a question, so timeline, I didn't hear that part of it. When would the work start? When would it be completed? Moving into the hot summer months?
Tom Roy let us know that it could get done before before the cooling season, which, we don't have a crystal ball, but I think it's one of the reasons we had asked him from the TM's office if this needed to get on tonight or if it could wait till July. Their answer is saying, let's get it done, which tells me they can move on it pretty quickly.
Well, and the temperature later in this week is like 90 something, okay.
So and agreeing that the funding source would be from capital reserves for right now?
I think that was what the finance director said, and I believe they're gonna line this up. There is a BOF meeting tomorrow. So I think they'll either walk it on or it may already be on the agenda.
And referencing public comment, nothing prevents us from applying for grants and
Nothing.
that to fulfill this obligation later. So we
Okay,
can
okay.
approve the spending and find sources of funding.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any whatever abstained? Okay, that passes. It'll be at the Board of Finance meeting tomorrow night.
Thanks, Adam.
She doesn't want us to talk.
Okay, the next item is the approve the 2025 bulky waste facility fee schedule. I did ask Tom Roy a couple questions on this because I left it on not on consent because I wanted to just highlight that these fees don't come to us. They go to the new transfer station, who is now USA Waste, I believe. Pretty much every fee increased on this, not just the permit fee. They did keep the senior permit fee at the same rate as it was before, but I went through pretty much every item is increased $10 at least. So I just want the public to be aware of that. And I don't know if there's other options to residents for this kind of stuff other than bringing it to our transfer station at these costs.
I think this is the most economical approach to disposing of a lot of items.
Okay, and Tom did say that we are comparable to other towns and that we're happy that at least that they have decided to stay and run the facility because otherwise it would fall to the town to take this all over.
I was gonna ask if we had a comparison to what the fees used to be.
Yeah, it was in the packet, that's what I used.
I didn't, I see, got
I
it.
went through each one.
I didn't keep scrolling.
Yeah, so.
Then never mind.
Okay, so
Thank you.
I'm gonna ask for a motion. Where's my thing? Oh yeah, okay, I don't know what happened to the motion. Motion to approve the bulky waste fee schedule for,
Chair, if I could, I was
Yeah.
asked to remind the board, and we will work on this at the TM's office, but to let the public know about the town's willingness to accept electronic devices at that location. So just wanted to put that out there. We'll get something out about that next week.
okay. Okay, so a motion effective June 16th, 2025 to adopt the 2025 bulky waste facility transfer station fee schedule as presented.
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
A second.
I have a question.
I do too.
Then there's discussion.
Discussion,
Is there
sorry.
discussion? Go ahead.
Is there any way to adjust this so that like, if I have to take something to bulky waste, I have to wait till July, if I don't have a permit now, because it's just like 2 weeks left in the
You can use
month,
mine.
like, is there a way to like amortize that or to have it so that if you come in, you know, in, I don't know, October, I guess you use 1 week, but I don't know, is there a way to,
Wait 3 weeks,
There is
2.5
There
weeks.
never has been.
yeah,
No, and I think that's where the 1 week pass, a lot of towns, other towns too, have like a 1 day pass. Or, you know, we have a 1 week pass, which I think is
and
nice.
it's the same rights as the full year pass?
$15
Yeah,
or $20.
So this USA Waste bought pains, I think we all know this. In the commercial sector and the residential sector, they're also ratcheting the rates. Paynes was a viable business, but I understand when you buy a business, you wanna make as much money as you can. And I feel part of the onus on the Board of Selectmen is to protect the residents. A claim has been made in here that we don't have to pay more. But it's all residents that have to pay more, so I would point out that we do have to pay more. The rates are going up on average 22.7%. That's not a cost of living adjustment, that is an increase in profitability. I just question why would you not put this out for an RFP? Maybe this is a great deal and I'm just spewing words. But why should we, Payne's built a rapport and a relationship with our town that was based on trust. And they were very good with our rates comparable to other communities. We were always doing well. I just don't understand why this would not be an RFP, cause US Waste, albeit they bought Payne's, I just can't just give them trust because they bought a company I trust.
Right, and
Did they
Payne's
just
was
get a-
local and USA Waste is not.
Did they just get awarded this contract?
Well, what was the other one? All Waste and
All
Payne's
Waste.
combined and sold to USA Waste. And the question has come up, it's a monopoly basically for all of us. I don't know if there's other options,
On the
that's a great.
residential, not right now, but because I'm dealing with this, I'm versed in it.
Got
In
it.
the memo, it says as part of their bid package and recently awarded contract.
So commercial and residential is separate. We do have two choices for residential, which this technically would fall under. Commercial, we actually have a choice of about 4 different people that will come to town. Because of the nature of this, I almost feel this would be a commercial thing which exposes us to other people that might be interested. I just don't understand the fire drill. I do know that the annual permit is coming to the point where normally we cut it off, but it's been kind of tough working with USA Waste, with the various enterprises, both residential and commercial, that have spoken with me, as well as my personal experience, that you might wanna shop it around. And this is like I said, over a 20% increase in all prices that all residents will now pay. So I just, go ahead.
I'll recognize her.
I'm sorry.
That's okay, do you wanna be
I didn't think you saw
first
her.
selectman for a
No,
day,
I do not.
Diana? I did see her.
Yes, because going to Kevin's point in here, when it references their bid package and recently awarded contract, who awarded this contract? Is this the contract that with the town? How did this come about? What is this recent bid package and awarded contract? Like are we really even having a choice in this matter if there was a contract? And honestly, to Steve's point, I got my bill recently, noticed that it went up, even tried to pay it. It took me 3 days to pay it because their website was down and crashed and kind of a mess, so I kind of questioned like. And then you have to call and it's an 800 number and nobody's local and you know, it was nice when Payne's was here, we can't do anything about that. Again, they were local. This is a whole a different monopoly ballgame that has no connection to this town and is, you know, I don't think really is, I don't wanna say they don't care, but they don't have the same connection and heart that we need. But where's this contract?
Yeah, so it was a contract with Payne's and through the
Okay.
merger and the acquisition, which of course the town didn't have anything to do with.
Right.
We are here. I'm gonna say just for the record, I'm not an expert on this. You know, my spidey sense says, you know, to urge extreme caution to the board in making any changes that would disturb this because of the, you know, a lot of the things you've mentioned. But I would say that this board controls the rates. You could adopt this, you could also rescind it later. If the board wants to act favorably tonight and then express or direct the town manager's office to with the commissioner, the director of public works to open up discussions about this and better understand it, we're all for that. I was not involved in the discussions. I do agree with Selectman Antonio that this impacts all of our residents and that the mere fact that it's a pass-through doesn't mean that any board should rubber stamp it, right? But that said, I think the appropriate, cautious, strategic thing to do would be for the board to approve it at this point. It can always rescind it or change it later and then ask your town manager to dive into this a little bit and get you an answer. That's what I would suggest.
Okay. And again, to add to this, it was presented as a risk, cause I said, what if we don't approve it?
Yeah.
And it was presented as a risk that
Big
no
risk.
one would be running the bulky waste station.
I think it's true, you see it with I have some experience with ambulance companies in New York, cause one company comes in, takes over another, the first thing it does is a top-down assessment of the financials, and now it's in there. And that's when you often see these requests for rate increases because, you know, quite frankly, as Selectman Antonio indicated, you know, Payne's was a favored provider in town and did its best to keep rates constant. That you could put that statement on its head and say that, you know, if you put it a different way, they were probably reluctant to raise rates. And you're saying the same thing. And if you say that, then you're implying to me that a new owner might very well need to raise rates to make ends meet. So I would be reluctant to disturb that without more information.
Okay, so I'm gonna first ask for a vote on this motion and I'm gonna weigh in on.
I have something else to say if we
Okay.
are open for discussion. So the other side of this, I think, is what the service level is beyond the fees that are being paid. I know that it's a challenge sometimes, especially if you've only got Saturday to get there by 3 and then they want you to actually get there by 2:45 and then it's basically lunch. It's like, when do you have to get there? If we could expand the hours of availability or they're willing to have that discussion, I'd be willing to ask the manager to include that in the negotiations and discussions about the availability of the service. We all do know that rates are going up. I agree with Selectman Antonio that it is not fun to have to pay more and the larger project that you're trying to dispose of, the larger the total bill is gonna be. I've been there. I don't necessarily see another way around this. I plan to vote for it tonight, but I don't see any reason why we can't develop a stronger relationship with them to actually explain what the citizens of Simsbury actually expect from the transfer station. That's all from me.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'd like to take the vote. All those in favor of approving the bulky waste, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is there any opposed?
I'm not opposed.
Okay, and any abstention? And then I would like to ask for a motion, I don't know if I need a motion, but a consent, making a motion, to ask the town manager to look into the options that were presented by Steve here tonight, to look into both the personal and town impacts and options for waste removal, bulky waste, personal trash, town trash, and also to Kevin's point, to look at expanded hours for the bulky waste schedule.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on that one?
We could vote on it.
Well, just I'm curious, cause Board of Education's gonna be involved, they pay a ton of money
huge.
for
Yeah.
waste disposal. I just think this is something that we need as a town, which would fall on Mark, not
Yeah, so we're
offense,
making, we're
buddy.
asking Mark to do it, yeah.
But you know, I think we should work in conjunction with Board of Education, which is separate, if I'm not mistaken, right? Or would they also turn to you for that representation?
I would say that's a brilliant idea. I mean, at the moment, they're not combined, so it's the municipal side.
I just think if we're gonna
Resident.
talk to them, let's
So
talk to
amend
them
the
with the big
motion.
guns.
Together we're a big
You're
customer.
talking about the municipal
The
services.
whole thing, you
Right.
wanna be
Yeah.
friends, let's be friends.
Understood. Happy to do it.
So let's expand, wanna amend that motion to include
Yes,
looking at the
please.
BOEs,
I accept that friendly amendment.
okay, oh, I didn't say friendly amendment. Okay, we're in discussion, all in favor of asking Mark to do, and Tom Roy actually to do some work on this, say aye.
Aye.
So
Any
the other
opposed?
vote was 4-1, is that what my understanding was, or was it?
5-1.
5-1, I mean, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Who are you notifying, just out of curiosity?
No, I
Nothing, it was a joke.
That's right.
Okay, alright, so that's done. I gotta keep moving here. Okay, the next item. This is to establish a food pantry assistant job description. This item came to personnel, it was not unanimous. It's to create a part-time food pantry assistant with the attached job description. And to use the funds from the Julia Darling Trust. So I have comments and questions, but I've been able to, I will ask them after everybody who wasn't at the personnel subcommittee or at the personnel subcommittee to ask their own questions on this. Diana.
So, and this was also brought up, I believe in public comment, but I want to really understand, is this a new position? Who is filling this position? How are we hiring for this position? Will it eventually be a permanent position? Basically all of that, like that is the crux of my questions, because, you know, is this going to be in perpetuity? And how is this going to play out?
Chair, can I take that?
Yes. Please do.
Thank you. The personnel subcommittee approved, again, let's frame the question. The question is, will the board authorize the creation of a job description? That's really what's before you tonight. Under the personnel rules and regulations, the administration, management has no authority to even make de minimis changes to a job description. So whether it's one word, one sentence, or, you know, change of a title, we need board approval for that. There is no impact to the general fund, as you know. But the question is whether the position would continue. Personnel sub wrestled with that, and it was agreed that the position would only exist as long as the funding was available from the trust. And that it would not continue as a general fund funded position down the road. I wanna just, if I can, answer a couple of comments that were made at public comment. First of all, I'd point out that the trust is funded by investment income on a principal.
It's an endowment.
It is an endowment, and the trustees, including Bank of America, the fiduciary, meet every year and assess their priorities, and they actually pass a budget and approve a budget that is based on their investment return on the prior year and their estimation of what it would be in the current year. And so what's in perpetuity is not the position, but the trust. And so because this is funded by investment income on the trust, we don't anticipate the funding would ever go away unless it was determined by either the director of social services or perhaps the town manager that the position was no longer returning to the taxpayers and the citizens and the seniors, you know, all the people that are impacted a benefit. So I think we would be the ones that would eliminate it, not the trust. So it will only be funded as long as the trustees approve it, and they approve a budget every year. So this would come before them every year. And if they ever chose to not fund it, the position would have to be eliminated. The second thing I'd say is that the public commenter was actually wrong about the implication that we've expanded, departments with grants and then converted positions to the general fund to the detriment of taxpayers. That comment was completely inaccurate. A good example actually is at social services, where there was a full-time social worker in the employ of the town that was funded by ARPA. And when ARPA was extinguished, we actually cut that position in my first budget as your town manager. So and it was never converted to the general fund. So I hope that sets that record clear. And the last thing I'd say is that, unless there's more questions, is that I did us a disservice when I put on the memo that this is a part-time position. A part-time position is 15, it's no more than 17 and a half hours per week. This position is 15 to 20 hours per month. I should have made it clear that it's a quarter time. It's not even a half a time position. It gets no benefits, no accrued time. It's there simply to help stock the shelves and go do the shopping. And lastly, the first selectman had asked me, well, who's doing the work right now? It's being done by a staff that was reduced when we cut one full-time employee, and even our director of social services has been known to go out and pick up things and so forth. So we're recommending it because it reduces work on our full-time employees who are paid by the general fund. So it's a good return on investment by the trustees, and we thank them for their willingness to approve this pilot.
Is this what they thought was kind of creating this position, is it what they felt was best used to fulfill the goal of the trust?
So I went back through my notes of that meeting. It was a Zoom meeting attended by the three trustees, Bank of America, our finance director, Kristen, and myself. My notes aren't quite clear as to whether how many proposals there were, but there were at least two. And I recall three. And there was a vibrant discussion among the trustees where they discounted one of them and said, no, we're not doing that. And then there might have been a second one that they didn't really like. But the answer to your question is that they selected this one of a number of options that we gave. And they said, the first one definitely didn't meet the terms of the trust. This one did.
I don't want to tell anyone how to run their own organization, so I'm assuming that the trust knows how to run this properly. But from public comment, do we know what the percentages of funds that go towards the actual food pantry food versus the people that work there? Just because it was brought up kind of.
I think during the budget process, we'll pay a little more attention to this. I will, and I should give kudos to the entire community, because as you all know, the food pantry particularly is funded by donations more than any other. I want to say this, but particularly probably more than any other part of municipal government. And so, when you take that element, the food pantry, which services, according to the memo that Kristen drafted, I think about 85 families or 85 individuals that frequent it on a regular basis. I think during the holidays, we've all heard that number has gone up to over 200. I think the answer to your question, Curtis, is that that there isn't a tremendous impact on the taxpayers for running that food pantry. The trust, I believe, also pays the rather de minimis rent for the new location at the church as well, and we thank them for providing such a great new home for the food pantry. So, again, it's 15 hours, 20 hours a month, and it was the trust's decision to approve this.
If I can inquire as to how many hours, because it's only 15 to 20, our packet says that the food pantry assistant will provide intermittent desk and phone coverage to the social services department so that staff can participate in staff meetings. Two things. How big is our social services department that we're having staff meetings that full-time can't attend? That just seems weird to me. And how many hours, there's only 15 to 20 hours in a month. How many hours are they at the desk and how many hours are they procuring the food?
So it's a classic case. I love this question because it's I just like it. It's a classic case of oversell, Steve, where when someone's trying to justify a position, they throw everything in but the kitchen sink.
Oh, so she's
And-
cleaning the bathroom too?
Well,
Or
and
he
you
or
know,
she,
I just wanna say, I completely agree with you, and frankly, the draft memo had more extraneous stuff in it, which I edited for that exact reason. But I did want to, in the proposed job description, give the director the opportunity to at least say to that individual who's here for, say, 3 hours on a Tuesday afternoon, hey, please cover the phones for an hour while we have a quick meeting or something. I let that stay. But I did edit from the draft job description anything that I thought the trustees wouldn't have liked, right? The trustees approved this because of the impact on our poor and on our needy. They did not approve it so that the person can answer phones or do anything
Well,
else.
that's my concern, to
And
be
that's
quite
exactly
frank.
right. But if they're there and they're in the building, I guess that what Kristen's view is, Steve, is that they wouldn't be included in the staff meeting. So, watch the phones, we'll be out in an hour or whatever.
But to that point, if the position is a flexible number of hours, it sounds like, wouldn't the sole purpose just to be stocking the food pantry and not doing administration for social services?
Again, I agree, and I don't think it was necessary to put that in the cover memo or the job description, and I hope it doesn't detract from the support for the position. It's just a zealous and eager, staff that wants to make sure that the board knows, hey, we're gonna get the best value for the buck.
But wouldn't the position be at First Church where the food pantry is and covering phones for social services as at Eno currently, and that's two different locations?
It is.
So then taking away from either time that they should be at the food pantry or shopping or whatever, and then you have transportation, I mean, yeah, I understand it's down the street, but still, I think that's a waste of resources, even if it's not to the taxpayers, like that's not necessarily the best use of these funds that we would be approving to allocate.
I would say this, if there's any trepidation on the part of board members about the sentences in the job description that allow the individual to do, administrative things outside of the food pantry work, those sentences we talked about, then amend the motion and delete the sentences from the job description and clarify that point, but please don't vote it down because we worked hard to get the trustees' support for something. And frankly, the trustees have charged us with doing more to spend down the money of the trust because we were underspending. They were the ones that came to us and said, can you suggest some things that we might be able to approve?
How many hours per month are actually spent on the food pantry currently? Cause we should have an idea of, is it 15 to 20 hours per month?
Well, whose job description is this is a question I was gonna ask. Whose job description are the pantry helper role currently in, and what will fill those job roles? Is this in the social services director's job description?
It's primarily every time I go to the food pantry, I see the same people there. I want to credit Rachel, I forget her surname, Loveland. And I've seen Kristen there many times on occasion as well, and Anne Marie. And I mean, it's kind of an all hands on deck. To Heather's question, I'd have to say just estimating it's probably closer to 40 hours a month because even though the food pantry isn't open every day, the shopping, the acceptance of donations, the paperwork and all of the administrative stuff that goes on it does feature. It features prominently in the work of the entire department, and we're very proud of the food pantry.
Could this just be a 1099, or could we contract with First Church if they were willing to do the function and then they figure out how to fill it?
We yes and no, actually. I heard two parts in that question, trying to listen carefully. We did investigate using a contractor as opposed to an employee. We discounted that for two reasons. One, the individual would need to a contractor would be using their own vehicle. We'd be reluctant to let a contractor use a town vehicle, and there were some concerns from the risk manager on that. But the second part of that question we had actually not looked at, in all honesty, which was the idea of getting direct help from the church. That would, I didn't think of that, didn't have that conversation.
Volunteers too.
Well, I think the volunteers can, but we have these resources that honestly, the endowment is producing money to offset the cost of operating it, whether it's, if it's a jar of soup, or if it's a person on hand that's helping somebody get the jar of soup. The trust is created for this purpose, and we're facilitating it. And if we can get, for instance, First Church as part of an expansion on what they're, and I don't wanna speak for them, I don't have any interest there, but I just, if there's a way for us to solve this without adding personnel, because I think there's other things with this too, that's the resistance here. It's actually not as much the money, it's the long-term, obligation that we end up adding here. There's no opposition to having somebody help out at the food pantry, it's just whether it's right sized and the right way to do it. I'd encourage us to pursue that avenue if others are in agreement, and we can find somebody to help manage that resource, and we're able to cut them a contract.
It's actually a great position for a senior, just putting it out there.
Exactly, but I don't think they need to be a town employee.
I guess my only confusion is that if the church were to take this on, we would be paying the church and the money would be the same.
Right,
So I'm not sure that I mean, it may be a distinction without a difference. If it was a full-time person, then I would agree with you because of the impact of benefits and all of that.
I contract with people all the time so that we don't have to take on the obligation of paying the staff and everything else that comes along with bringing on staff. A quarter time or otherwise, there's other risk that's associated with that. And I don't necessarily wanna avoid that or get the unions all bristled about us, trying to circumvent something. But I think this is a unique function and a really small revenue source and a unique problem that we could solve,
Understood. Yep. Fair point.
I do wanna go back and clarify though that this is, they're going to be for just three to 5 hours a week, actually hiring somebody new, not using these funds to say, well, they didn't come this week, but I worked over there and the money goes to people that are doing the job currently.
Like overtime?
It's a part-time job.
I know Diana said, so they won't be used for that because the social worker who primarily does the shopping now, Rachel or Kristen are both exempt, so there is no overtime for that.
Fair. Thank you for that. I just wanna make the public, I wanna just be very transparent in how this is being used.
The savings would be not monetary, Stephen, they would be able to, instead of the hour and a half to go do the shopping, they could see like another client or two or something like that. So it's efficiency, not a financial savings.
Good answer.
And Diana, one thing I'd say is that you were saying for a senior, but the requirements say you have to be able to lift, and not saying seniors can't lift 50 pounds.
Right, true.
And be able to it's a lot of, it seems like it's a decent amount of work.
I do have one question, just to cut off Wendy.
Yeah.
Did we ask if the Darling trustees would be interested in offsetting our church rental fee?
The food pantry's already paid out of the trust.
I believe they are fully paying it now, Steve.
Okay, so that is.
That's a trust funded.
Alright.
We did go through a number of other options and the genesis of this came, they initiated it in asking us to find uses that make sense.
Did you ask about a pizza allowance?
I did not ask about that.
So I have a couple comments and then I'm gonna put the motion on the floor. I'm looking at this, we're creating a new position after we just did our budget, regardless of where the funding's coming from. Also, the trust, does, say that it's for the benefit of the public and the money's been used in the past for various assistance for food, shelter and utility costs. So one of my things is why couldn't we spend some of this more money on food, utility costs and shelter as opposed to a staff member? Also, the other thing that kind of just bothers me, I guess, it's to alleviate the duties noted above from the community social worker and social services director so they can focus on more pressing tasks. I don't know what those pressing tasks are that are 3 hours a week. And even in personnel, we suggested there is Instacart, there's things like that, instead of spending time in the grocery store buying food for the food pantry. So that's what I'm gonna say, and I'm gonna ask for a motion effective June 16th, 2025 to establish the food pantry assistant job description as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any more discussion on that?
I'd like to make a friendly amendment to that motion to remove the just part of the job description that would provide intermittent desk and phone coverage to the social services department so full-time staff may participate in staff meetings.
accepted. Any other discussion?
I think somebody has to second that.
Oh, somebody.
No, it was moved and seconded.
Okay.
I guess unfortunately I'm conflicted. I think that this is the appropriate use of it. I'm concerned about taking on a town staff member to accomplish the function. So I'd be willing to find a way for us to solve this need, but not necessarily take a town staff person on. So unfortunately, I think I may have to vote against
Yeah, well,
adopting this.
okay, so all those, I accepted your motion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That's three, all those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Aye,
I can say nay, cause I'd rather see the church do it.
so this fails. It's three to three.
So I guess I'll make a motion then to ask the town manager to explore alternative means to use the trust's funds and support the food pantry with the appropriate staff.
Thank you.
Sure.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye, so all those opposed say nay. So that passes 5-1.
Thank you.
Okay,
Who said nay?
I did.
You don't want me to do that?
To do what? I don't,
I'm sorry, I
it's a new position, right? Funded elsewhere.
I'm sorry, I thought the vote was to ask me to
find alternative
find
means.
alternatives. Are you voting no
To
on
find
that?
alternatives to funding so you're saying,
No,
explain
I
that.
understand where she's coming from.
Cause we
She's-
voted, we didn't pass the new position. So what are you proposing? Not creating a new position and find ways to do
Well,
this work
First of
for-
all, I'm shocked that you didn't know what vote you were presiding over just now.
I-
My motion
Yes,
was
Kevin.
simply to ask the town manager to pursue alternative means to use the funds that we're receiving from the trust and find appropriate staffing for the food pantry. That was my motion.
Okay, and I'm saying.
And you voted against it
I
and
did.
the motion's settled.
I know what I voted against, so
And
thank
the
you.
motion is settled.
Thank you.
Be
Yeah, really.
aggressive.
I know what I voted against.
Okay.
Thank you. Let's move on. The recommendation for the Housing Policy Advisory Commission.
Wanna take a break for a drink?
Alright,
It's a joke.
Yeah.
Sorry, trying to loosen the mood here.
Take
that's
You wanna
just,
take a
that was a
5-minute
point of order
recess?
in my opinion, Kevin. So discuss a recommendation from the Simsbury Housing Policy Advisory Committee related to potential development in town-owned property. I brought this forward. We impaneled the Simsbury Housing Policy Advisory Commission back in when, Mark?
Yeah, I think it was in March, just after I had started my job here, actually.
So we impaneled them to look at housing opportunities, and we told them that we would bring select items back to the board to discuss and move forward if we so chose, so that we could take action on some of these housing proposals. What I'm asking the board tonight for is to take up recommendation number 2 in the SHPAC report. I can pull it up if I can find it.
And we did present printed copies, Chair, on your.
Yep, thank you, they're very fancy. Trying to find the page it's on, if somebody wants to tell me what page it's on. It's number 2, I thought.
Wow, this is nice.
Fancy, expensive paper.
It is very fun.
Okay, it's on page 10. Okay, to investigate whether there are town-owned properties that can support the development of housing with an affordable component, making such land available and or purchasing land for this purpose. And what the SHPAC committee, which had representation from all boards and commissions in the land use area, aging and disability, DEI, I believe. Was DEI on there, Mark?
Yes, it was, yes,
Okay,
yes.
oh, C was our thing, to look at a few opportunities. One is the town-owned land on Iron Horse, one is the 23 acres at Meadowwood, and then something about Eno Farms. So I'm proposing that the board take up this investigation and start looking at the properties that we have to see what can be done. I also included in here, and I appreciate the comments that people brought in public audience. There's 288 acres at Meadowwood of land, and 24 acres was designated from the get-go for the future and best use of the town of Simsbury. it was originally shown as soccer fields, athletic fields, and then those were taken away to leave the land open for the highest and best use of this land was presented at a Board of Finance meeting. So as far as that could be a housing or use of this land, the land is not being sold. The land is being looked at for potential use. I'm gonna add a couple things in here, so if you can stay with me on that. So I'd like to get, I guess I would make a motion to take up recommendation number 2 and look at these properties.
So moved.
I was gonna, okay, alright, you could do, well, I want
Yeah, well,
okay,
you know.
I'll add discussion if you want. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
If I could, I was the liaison and we did an exhaustive discussion, answers, questions. We poked and prodded and we narrowed it down from initial. Mark did a great job leading the team. What was it, 77 ideas?
75, Stephen.
You know, just ignored the 2 I came up with. Anyways, my point is, we drilled down and this was probably the biggest one in my opinion. And we're already poised, we've already been poised as part of the Meadowwood proposal. We have this parcel that's already been identified. And now it's been recommended by SHPAC. It's not abutting anyone. We have a place for it. We have a need for it. That's definitely not being really contested. And I'm a big supporter of this. It would be moving it forward instead of just spinning a wheel. So I just wanted to
Thank
speak
you.
in support of
Is
it.
there any other comments? Cause I have some too.
On here it says financial impact is none. Is that just because town?
So
It's just an exploration.
yeah, so right now, so I just wanna, as an open space chair, I wanna share that I was fully transparent at the open space meeting on the fact that I was bringing this to the board from the recommendations of SHPAC. It's also in the POCD as a recommendation. I also brought up to them, because as Susan Messino pointed out and Marjorie Winter, that they would like to swap the 24 acres to 24 acres that are off of County Road behind some trees that is not on the original maps. And the town has talked about this 24 acres, that these were selected for reasons at the time to be the focus of the 24 acres. That said, the 24 acres that they would like to swap for are behind their property boundaries behind Hampshire Road, whereas these 24 acres are kind of standalone and not in anyone's backyard. So again, to add to that, I'm on the CROG's housing policy, that's not the policy advisory, I'm on a housing committee with CROG, and they asked for volunteers to do a free study with their consultant to look at town-owned property for the development and potential future for housing. And I made the suggestion that they look at this property. There's no commitment, I don't know if we would be accepted, but what it would do is give us some sort of guidance on if this is even something that could happen there. And then if it is a viable thing, it would come obviously to the board to public hearing if it were to lead to an RFP of some sort. So that's where it's in the communications, that piece on the 24 acres. The swapping of the 24 acres, I mean, I left that to the town to decide because the town picked this in the beginning, and I believe we've done a lot of work on those 24 acres. But if there is a future, I also told Open Space, if we've already submitted this, if we can ask Goldman and York if there's an opportunity to look at the alternative lots as part of their process, but if they do select this and think that this is a place that they could create some sort of, what's the word I'm looking for, suitability study, then I would be in favor of that.
So just so I fully understand what this is to bring in that outside company to look at this.
No, it's just to recommend that the board take up recommendation number 2 and start looking at the town-owned land.
It's to move forward, if I'm not mistaken, on this concept, but I do wanna acknowledge that when Meadowood was deeded to the town, it was already discussed where to put this. You know, it's at the intersection with, I forget the road across the street.
Newbury Court.
Right, it would be a four-way intersection where many of you have seen the construction entrance. It's got a natural flow to it. And there's three options that Chapac presented us with. This is the lowest hanging fruit. The other two are viable, but they're a little higher up on the tree. I mean, hopefully we'll get those commuter lots and we can proceed. But today, this is the only one we can really push forward. And I think that's what we're doing here, is at least pushing it forward. It's not committal. We don't have to do anything. We're just sort of like we just asked Mark to look into the food pantry position. This is very much on the same parallel. We're gonna go forward and look into that, whether this is even viable, honestly. It might come back that it isn't viable, in which case it's a moot point.
And we've heard comments tonight, little threatening comments about if we do anything, but when we bought Meadowood, this was part of the plan and the deal when we bought Meadowood, that the town would have the right to a section of this property. There's 288 acres that have been kept open and free from 600 and something homes or 300 and something homes. And this is an attempt to potentially create some single level senior type housing that I've been asked about, which was supposed to go on Iron Horse at one point and did not happen. And that to see if this is feasible, there may not be a developer who would even wanna look into this, but to just see if there is a suitability study that we could do at this point in time. So on that, is there any more discussion on that?
I have something to say.
Sure.
So while I'm in support of exploring these options, I think that's something that we should always be exploring options for things, but I guess my real concern is it seems like we don't have a larger overarching vision for Simsbury. And we have things that sit in silos, the POCD, and we're doing the SHPAC now, and we have a charrette, but if everything stays siloed and we don't have like a real full vision of where Simsbury's going, I'm concerned that it's going to be unrecognizable in 15 years' time. And I just think that's something that needs to be addressed. It's just an overarching topic.
Can I respond?
Sure.
You're wrong. No, I'm just kidding. No, but on what my actual response was, first of all, the POCD and planning should have a vision for our town.
Yeah.
And it should be adjusted every couple of years. The one anomaly we have no control over is the state of Connecticut. And not only did they throw 1031G at us, where it's our,
830.
yeah, whatever. I apologize, you are correct, I was talking about real estate exchange, but regardless, they've already put that on us and we asked for the moratorium and we're trying to guide it because they're gonna keep throwing stuff at us. And if we don't have, like you say, a vision, they're gonna be like, well then do this because we're negating all of your laws and taking all of your control away. This is a way to try, in my opinion, be ahead of the ball in an uncommittal fashion. I can't stress uncommittal enough.
Well, and that's why I agree with moving forward with this, and the reason we set the SHPAC up was for the reason you just said, where you have pressures coming down from the state and how can we try to get ahead of it and have a vision there. And I think the POCD does try to address an aspect of the vision. But I think there needs to be a bigger picture to it all, is basically what I'm
So
saying.
you're,
I concur.
yeah, so you're saying, and again, not to answer that here, but I agree, a strategic vision for the town as a whole. I mean, we do our goals every 2 years, but that changes with every board, but it doesn't carry forward. And has the town, I know we don't like studies, but has the town ever done a strategic overarching vision for the town? Maybe that's something that gets taken up, as we face all these housing, HB 5002, which could be coming. But this motion is on the table to just pursue recommendation number 2.
Can you restate the motion, please?
I have a question. If we pursue recommendation number 2, is this in a, like, would that then part of this motion be to use the CROG and to see if the suitability for housing, I guess, is that part of it? Or is that?
It's a adjunct to this because it was done because they just asked for volunteers.
Right. So,
but it could be again, if we get selected, George submitted it and I also wrote a letter, cause I had just verbally asked about that. It could help us see what is possible for free there.
Right, correct, for housing.
For free, and so if we don't get it, then we're back to what do we do here, right? Where do we go? If we do get it, we have somebody to create kind of like a simple template for us to say, yes, this could even happen and this can't happen.
Right.
So.
But that's specific to housing is
To housing.
Okay. So then to Heather's point, for Meadowwood and the parcels that we have, I'm not disagreeing that if it's free and we can get a suitability study, why not? And we could see options, but I also think we should have an overall vision of what we want to utilize that land for. And it may be housing, but I know there's been a lot of things floated out.
Yeah, so this is focused only on 24 acres, only on a small piece of it. The question came up at open space, are we looking at the larger Meadowwood? We haven't, Tom Taberski that question, it has not been a priority, but if it is a priority, but I'd like to just right now, let's keep this to.
No, I mean that small parcel, like, and is that small parcel always supposed to be housing or was supposed to be anything?
Anything. It was originally athletic fields.
Right.
And senior center was one of them.
Right.
Yup, and then highest and best use at one of the Board of Finance presentations, they said obviously athletic fields is not the highest and best use of the land. It's for a future determination of a future board or the town, and that's what it was left at in 2021. So that's all. So I just gonna call a vote on the motion.
Can you restate the motion, please?
You said it, to move on recommendation to focus on recommendation number 2
and to push forward.
in the from the SHPAC's report.
Can I just ask one more thing?
Is there a motion or
If we move forward with
Yes.
the recommendation, then how will that process work and at what point in that process will we receive updates and how will we receive the updates on how things are moving along with the recommendation?
I guess what I would just say is for the Meadowwood thing, if we get part of this study, then we see how that plays out, and then that would come back to the board. And we would say if it's something that we could possibly do, if there's a contractor who could do that. Or as Mark has said, that could be input to an what is it? Instead of an RFP, an RFI something?
RFEI.
RFEI, what does that stand for?
It's a request for expressions of interest.
To see what, could happen there. There's no decisions being made on what that is, it's just taking up the action request of SHPAC. And secondly on that list is the Iron Horse properties that we've been talking about. They're believe we missed some sort of cutoff to do some dealing with the state on that, but that is also something that's been, you discussed that there too. So it would allow us to pursue that also.
It's queued up for the next legislative session,
Okay,
but it's closed for the year, so to say.
okay, do you wanna repeat your motion?
Well, it does say no action required on the agenda. It says for discussion purposes
he's
only.
made the
Okay, so you made the motion.
Well, I'm asking for a motion so that we can at least
I'll restate the motion.
acknowledge that we're taking the SHPAC's recommendation seriously.
I made a motion to support recommendation number 2 of the SHPAC report to investigate whether there are town-owned properties that can support the development of housing with an affordable component, making such land available, and in particular, the portion of Meadowwood that is set aside.
Okay, and who seconded that? Did someone second that? Cause I thought they did.
I thought so, cause we started
Tom, did
discussion.
somebody second that?
Sorry, I didn't have that one.
Okay, does anybody wanna
Does
second
anyone
that?
second it?
And just to clarify, in your motion, you're not mentioning the purchasing of land for the purpose.
I intentionally stopped that because that
Yeah.
would be a
Yeah.
future thing.
Okay.
Good.
That would be the commuter lots.
Did somebody just second that?
No.
Okay,
That one I got.
anybody gonna second that?
Die out.
I'll second it. I can
Okay.
second it, right?
Yeah, of course.
So I'm gonna,
So
what?
then clarification on that, because I know you included in that, including that property, but according to the recommendation, it's just investigating whether there are town-owned properties, and that could be any town-owned property for appropriate housing, and that we should start to investigate. You added in there, including this, so that would cover that, so that would be part of it, but it's not exclusive to that property, but all town-owned properties including that. Does that make sense? Am I clarifying that correctly?
Yeah, the Meadowood property is in obviously recommendation 2.
Right.
And did you make that as a priority of this motion?
I
As a
tried to.
first step?
That was my
As a
intent.
first exploration of this property?
To get the ball rolling, so to say. There were 3 properties. The other 2 are not ready to be considered.
Right.
This one is ready to be considered, so let's at least consider it.
So no, I guess my clarification then is, because the way it reads, it's whether there are town-owned properties not including these other 2.
So we're talking
Like-
about what's in recommendation number 2. Whatever is in the document from the Housing Policy Advisory is what we're pointing to, with an emphasis on Meadowood because it's just sitting there.
But if we're emphasizing Meadowood for this, then would we need to emphasize
Well, so
parallel process
so
of
let's
other
say
options for
That's where I'm getting at, because it says town-owned properties, which could include other parcels that we may own, exclusive of Meadowood. That's where I'm trying to clarify.
So then,
I understand having Meadowood be a priority to look at first, but the way it's reading is any town-owned property, we could start investigating for housing, is the way this recommendation is reading.
Then I'd make a friendly amendment to center on Meadowood, cause that's really what this is about, just getting the process rolling forward. Again, it's non-committal. It's just saying, let's start assessing information.
I guess I agree with this, I agree with move forward with
It's
this,
okay.
but I don't understand what the next step is. So there's no cost, there's no additional effort.
it's basically consensus of the board to move forward on this. And that's what we're looking for, is to move forward on looking at this, exploring this.
But what does move forward mean? I guess that's where I looked
It
at.
means seeing if we get a free study on this property that we can use. If we don't, then it comes back to us because we would have to do an RFP or something like that,
So we're
right?
not really we're really not making a motion to move forward and look at recommendation 2. We're saying we're looking to if we're selected to move forward with having them present what they would do with the 24 acres at Meadowood. So it's not really looking at the overall recommendation and opening up down that road.
But I guess
Go ahead.
if we don't get that, we may encompass or encumber or whatever the word is to do an RFEI or RFP to see what is possible out on that lot.
They're not asking us to apply. What we're trying to do is apply. So if we say, okay, we support it, then the application is looked on more favorably than if we do not support looking into this. Otherwise, why would you put the effort in, to be quite frank? If the person that is asking you something says, yeah, it might bother, I don't know. So that's what I'm saying, is we're trying to get a consensus, or at least that's my perspective, that it's at least worth their time to do the study on this land, unless you do not think it's worth their time to do the study on this land, which everyone has an opinion that they're entitled to.
Well, on top of that though, if we don't do that, the housing policy does talk about looking at that land and to issue an RFP for developers. So that would be point 2, is if we're not part of this study, that they've asked us to get an RFP for developers in this context. So
correct.
I would say that would be something that we would have to bring back here to pursue again.
Right, I am not in disagreement with that. I am clarifying that the way that it reads, and I understand that you made it priority to Meadowwood, but I'm also not in disagreement to also investigate other town properties for housing. Outside of that,
Well, there's,
not these, but like, are there exclusive of,
I guess I would say then the Housing Policy Commission didn't look at them and this is what they recommended we
Okay.
look at.
We didn't get a cohesive list from Georgia, I'm not sure we
That's-
tasked him with it. But that has been something that we have spoken about, and that is why the blanket, to be honest, town-owned properties. That being said, most of the town-owned properties have been vetted in our past and none have moved forward. So I mean, it sort of is a self-answering problem. I think we would have pushed it forward. This is a viable place to do this. Do I want more houses in Simsbury? No, I live in Simsbury, I'm like everyone else, not in
It's
my
around the backyard.
backyard.
Right.
But that's an unrealistic stick in the sand in today's day and age. So this is the path of least resistance. It's forward momentum. I don't think it's a rocket ship that we're straddling, that all of a sudden next month we're gonna be like, okay, we're building, 500 duplexes. It's not that. It's what would even fit with, within our community and be an acceptable accent for it. So, like I said, it's whatever. It's not a major thing that we're really asking for. And it's being asked for as a consensus that we consider moving forward. I mean, to do this whole study for Chappaq, I don't know how many hours we all put into this.
Right.
I wouldn't wanna discount the man hours that were put into this. Pick something. This is the lowest hanging fruit.
I'm not discounting
No, I'm
this,
not
yes.
trying to be contentious. My point is, this is the lowest hanging fruit.
and I agree to move forward, again, clarifying the language that was,
It's just the way it's not easy to understand.
It's weird, it's hard to articulate, to be quite
Right.
frank.
I think if we just say that the goal is to look at these 24.
Recommend, so I think you could
Do you
just,
want me to rephrase the motion?
just we're taking up, the Chappaq recommendation number 2.
Can I be that
Yeah.
vague? I'd like to make a motion that we take Chappaq's recommendation number 2 and pursue
to be precise.
2B in specific
As a first phase.
as a first phase of considering the Chappaq recommendations.
I'll second.
Okay, is there any more discussion?
I don't think I'm in favor of the purchasing of land part, so
Oh yeah,
that's
we
not
took
part
that
of
out though, the
Right.
first time around.
Right.
And it's just not clear to me what the definition is. I appreciate the work that the committee did on this. I just don't feel like there's something for me to take action on tonight, so I think I'll be voting no.
Okay.
I
So
will make a friendly amendment to exclude the language around purchasing the land for this purpose.
okay, all those in,
Accepted.
okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. How many said aye?
Everyone but Kevin.
No, Heather and
Oh, Heather did?
Okay,
I'm sorry, I
has
thought I saw
anybody
your
abstain,
hand go
all
up.
those against, say nay. 2, okay, so it's 4-2, so that passes. Okay, thank you. Where are we now? Oh, now we have more fun ahead of us.
Soccer club.
Oh my gosh.
To schedule, this is discuss the recommendation, sorry, public hearing, so I'm trying to find my agenda now. So Mark has been working on this MOU with the Simsbury Soccer Club, provided a draft. And we suggested that whatever happens here, we have a public hearing because it's taking public land and using it for an exclusive use of entity in town. But I do wanna schedule the public hearing, but I did ask to have this on the agenda to provide comments because as Mark, do you wanna talk to this, saying that this is not complete?
Yeah, just briefly, Chair, again, typically we put draft documents in front of the board to approve them, and then once they're approved, they're final. But in this case, as I sent out an email late Friday, because we've gotten some questions in my office about it, I would describe this as a working draft, so it is not proposed to as final. In fact, both sides to the discussions have to get input, they from their board and me from you. So again, as the chair indicated, we're really just looking, A, to set a public hearing, but more importantly, to engage with you, maybe even, not necessarily tonight, but by email, give us comments, look at the draft, see where we're going, and feel free to reach out to my office with any questions or to schedule any discussion in advance of the public hearing. And then the goal was, once we get the public comment and we get your comments, we could then compile a final draft for your consideration, hopefully at the August meeting.
So I guess my question is, if we're scheduling a public hearing, but we don't know what the public hearing is really on because we don't have a final draft.
Well,
We have comments, how are we, I know I asked for the public hearing, but will the draft be ready in time for the public hearing to be presented and discussed?
It's an interesting question. I think we want to make sure that the public is aware that it's a draft and that you want public comment before it's finalized. So that's the answer is it's not going to be in final form for the public hearing either. We really, I think the board wants to hear the comment in a way that where the public knows the document probably would change, right? I will point out that we had conversations with the town clerk about this. My deputy checked into it because you're not passing a local law or anything. This isn't a public hearing where we've got a specific document that the public's being asked. Like if you were passing a tax exemption or an amendment or changing the rates, then you need the document. But because you're really just seeking public comment on the concept, the draft is sufficient.
So on top of, is there a better option to just provide our comments tonight on this to create a more final draft before we go to a public hearing?
Well, there's two things on that, and this goes to how you want to do it. It's really up to the chair. Because we're still in negotiations with them, I'd rather the board comments were submitted, individually or via email, and so that at least the dissemination of that information can be controlled. So I wouldn't encourage an open dialogue on the record about the details. The agenda item tonight is simply to set the public hearing and hear from the public. And we'll post the draft, and I encourage board members to contact Tom or I at your convenience to give us comments after you've had a chance to review it more fully.
Well, so I was asked by a board member if we should be doing this in executive session, like we have some other MOUs, so that we can provide all of our comments, or should we provide some commentary now? There's a question.
I think that the board is, where you and I were in complete agreement on this issue, Wendy, was the idea that it's important before the board form its opinion that you seek public comment.
Agreed.
I think, one of the things we've heard, I've heard throughout my career, was that boards, not this board, any board, have public hearings after things are already pretty much ordained and set in ink, and it's just rubber stamp, and that's why you tend to get 4 or 5 people at a public hearing. But here, it's kind of a unique situation because we haven't finished the draft. We want to hear from members of the public about the concept. Really, fundamentally, there's a couple of issues here. One is, and they're not confidential, one is, what exactly are the renovations being proposed? There is some controversy amongst the public about the use of turf fields, as the board members have seen and heard. And also there's the public policy decision which this board has to make as to whether you want to grant an exclusivity license agreement at all, and if so, upon what terms. So it's certainly a policy decision about whether you want to do this, and I think the public comment is important to you as you reach that conclusion. So for that reason, we're recommending the public hearing be set, and we don't consider the draft confidential.
Okay. And can we provide comments tonight?
You can if you want the other side to hear them.
Okay. Does anybody have any feedback on the?
I think that it's good that this is proceeding. I was encouraged by the presentation we heard before. I think that the public hearing can be simply not necessarily on the draft memorandum, but on the process of the town entering into a 20-year agreement with the Simsbury Soccer Club for the exclusive use of Curtis Park in the summer months or something like that. And that's what we're actually asking for feedback on. I would be happy to accept the comment from the public, but I don't think that we need them to go through each line and provide copy editing feedback or specifics on the contract. That's not what we're asking for. We're asking conceptually, do you agree? And if you did agree, what would be the circumstances that you would? And if there are things that you wanna make us aware of that we couldn't possibly, cause the Greenland sparrow lands here that we heard earlier, that's important for us to know before we enter into an agreement. So if we're willing to do something like that, I think that we can set this. If we set this public hearing as it's worded, I don't think that there's any problem. But what we're actually asking is what I think, what I just mentioned.
I have a few questions I have two questions.
Yes, sir.
One is, does because of my hometown hero, they spent time for Simsbury Little League. Does Simsbury Little League have exclusive rights to the fields? Because they maintain and they make upgrades.
They do not and will be prepared to make the distinction. We've had some discussions about that, Selectman Looney, and so we're aware of that, but there are significant differences between the organizations. So the fact that one might win a long-term license agreement and the other hasn't asked and might not win it, there are reasons.
So there's precedents that could be set for this.
Absolutely.
And then two, do we know the high school does advertising during the football season? This is proposing to have the ability to do advertising on the soccer fields.
Yes.
Do you know, are there any restrictions on the high school of what could be advertised out there? Or would this be similar to the way the high school does it?
We would certainly be guided by the policy that the Board of Ed has adopted with respect to advertising. You know, I'm not an expert on that. I'd say that that's a policy decision for this board to come up with. What we're trying to capture in the license agreement, the memorandum, is their ability to do, you know, permissive advertising, and whether or not there should be a cost or a revenue sharing of that revenue, given the fact that they're investing, you know, between $1 million and $2 million as projected, right? So, you know, we need some guidance from the board on the policy side as to how to make that work. But advertising, I think, has an important role in the agreement.
So I'm gonna ask the board for your thoughts on, do you want to provide some comments as input to Mark tonight, if you have them, so that he can continue to work through this memorandum of understanding in advance of the public hearing? Or do you want to just wait to the public hearing and have our own discussion after we hear from the public? Happy to have anybody weigh in on that.
I'm gonna hold back. I mean, I did have one thing like the sign should not be road facing, but that's such a nuance. I liked what Kevin alluded to, that we really wanna have a public hearing on the concept of pursuing an understanding.
Correct.
And keep it very high level, not a hearing on the draft memorandum.
I want the driveway here, I want a concession stand.
Okay, so you wanna make, reword that?
Do you mind if I make
Yeah,
it?
no, make it.
I'd like to make a motion effective June 16th, 2025 to set a public hearing on the concept of pursuing an understanding with the Simsbury Soccer Club for 6 p.m. on Monday, July 14th, 2025.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion on that? No comments. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so that's moving forward. So bring your comments on the 14th. The next item, there's another one, the micro grant program. This is Mark's. I will turn this over to Mark.
Thanks, Wendy. I'm just gonna introduce it really quickly and then ask my deputy, Tom Fitzgerald, to walk you through some of the specifics. But, you know, generally speaking, what this is, a micro grant is a grant to an entity, in this case, local businesses, for, you know, less than $5,000 is how we define it. We're recommending this as potentially the pilot for an annual grant program that could be used over the years to support Simsbury local businesses. And this is a concept that came from, well, I'll let Tom speak to that. And we're recommending it. I briefed the Economic Development Commission on the idea, and there was broad consensus on that panel that this was really cool and exciting, and they certainly were all for the idea. And then it's our plan, if we get board approval today, to also brief the Public Safety Committee at their next meeting on Wednesday morning, because this is a micro grant that has impact to our business partners, but also to public safety. Tom?
Thank you. So this idea actually, Selectman Getz had reached out about having us find grants for AEDs. And that then spun off the thought of if we became the grantor and kind of provided AEDs to our local businesses. We have that economic development line item money that was approved in the 24-25 budget, where 85,000 went to Main Street and there's the remaining 15,000 kind of for economic development. And so with the year-end closing, this was kind of thought of as a way to use that funds while also kind of helping the business community. So we would propose a grant where ideally we can get 3 AEDs, potentially 2. And then businesses can apply to the town to then have them put in their place of business. It was a way to also get in touch with economic development we would have businesses kind of contact information where we can then invite them to come to EDC meetings and speak on why they're doing business in Simsbury and all other things like that. We would have a kind of review panel made up of EDC, public safety, and then probably a member from the planning department, I believe Mark said, to kind of review the grant applications and pick if we're able to purchase 2 AEDs, they would pick the 2 winners. If we're able to purchase 3 with the funds, they'd be able to pick the 3 and then hopefully benefit the Simsbury community.
I had a couple questions and just how do we prove that this, I know it would provide public safety, but how do we're using economic development funds, how do we prove that this benefits economic development in town?
Good question. I think part of that is one, we get the contact information so we have for going forward to invite to our EDC meetings. 2, it's an expense that those local businesses won't have to purchase. The machine itself, I've seen from anywhere from $2,500 to $5,000 a unit, including pads. And I know on our end, the batteries that we replace, either on the regular replacement schedule, I don't know if that's 6 months or a year, but they're a decent amount. So allowing that upfront cost of the unit, those businesses don't have to purchase, can help them out that way.
No, yeah.
It was my understanding, cause I was there with the EDC and I understand, I think it was Lori Boyko that stated, we're spending the taxpayers' monies. If it saved their life though, I'm sure that taxpayer would be fine with the preventative measure. But when it was discussed at EDC, one of the other options that, to be frank, I brought up was LifeVac, substantially more economical. And we could easily get them in every food establishment. They're less than $100 each, they're $70 each. And one of the discussions were, well, I'll just say it, a member of staff had a great idea to, give everyone a LifeVac and we'd say Simsbury sucks. But that was quickly shot down as a joke, just so we're clear. But the point is, from the promotional way you could play it is we're making the community safer for you to come to our community. And, it's a safe place. Everybody wants to feel safe. We're proud of our low crime rate and we're proud of all the things we do. This would be yet another thing. But I think the LifeVac should be a component of this, and I think it's far more reaching for far less. My other concern that I'll just voice so I don't have to take the floor again is, does this go away next year? It's a one-time grant, or is this gonna be a new program that every year we're gonna fund and have to brainstorm how to have a grant like a contest, or is this just a one-off, one and done? Which, I just need the answer to that.
Yeah, so 2 parts on that one. So the first part of it going away is, this came up with it being the year end right now, so it's kind of that 15,000 is kind of at this point use it or rolled up into the general fund, so it was a way of using those funds best for the community. If it is to continue, you have 100,000 in your EDC budget for the next upcoming year.
Oh, thank you.
85 is for Simsbury Main Street, so there is that 15 again. It's earlier in the budget process, we haven't even started that fiscal year yet, so you can have another discussion on if you want this program to continue again or use that for a different economic development item.
Does public safety have money, or is this strictly coming from economic development?
It's the economic development line item in the budget. And then the Life Act, so I need to reach out to our health district. I was looking in doing the research for the Life Act. There's two different brands, and then I saw a potential concerning NIH study that they might not actually be effective and might cause tongue damage. So I need to reach out to them and make sure that it's.
Ever been with someone choking? There is rib damage is definitely on the line.
So
It was like tongue damage, dead, I don't know.
But I need to reach out, I wanted to reach out to the health district to make sure it was a approved kind of item that they have and they've heard of it type thing, but it is something to consider adding on to the grant as well.
Is this, so you mentioned the battery?
Yep.
Are we responsible for maintaining the
So
battery?
part of the grant form would be that they would be acknowledging that they're in charge of the maintenance and the training of their equipment.
I have a question to Heather.
Yes.
When you said to pursue, asked to explore ways to provide the installations, I also wonder, are there outside grants that we could explore to?
That was my initial question.
That was what I was wondering if that was your initial question, but then this grew out of that.
Yes, and
Okay.
that's kind of I think what Mark had said, but yes, that was my initial, especially, just after the incidents that happened at
Right.
the tennis club and
Right.
just in general of occurrences that
Did
we've heard
we-
through public safety on our residents.
We did.
Yeah, and there's nothing.
No, I mean, I would say this, that the grants that we might be eligible for would allow us to put AEDs on town property. And my understanding is we've already done that.
Done that, got it.
And what we're trying to do here is obviously everybody knows AEDs save lives, so there's the public safety connection. But from the economic development, it's just a way to, kind of get two birds with one stone because you're supporting local businesses. In order for them to apply, they must A, not already have one, and B, agree to maintain it for a period of 5 years, to the earlier question. So we're using municipal funds to establish outposts around the community that don't already have them. And given that, they have a great track record, I was just reading something in the Wall Street Journal recently that 70% of heart attacks happen at home or out at the store. They don't happen, at work. They're I was glad to hear that because I'm here a lot of hours in the week, but the research that Tom did on this, I must say, hats off to him. It's got me, to the point where, I want to get one of those portable ones for home, because it's a preventable, potentially fatal event. And I think it's really serious that, and it's a great opportunity because that money is in the budget. And if it's not used very soon, it'll be contributing to what my estimation is of a $2.5 million service.
So
I just thought that was important for the public to understand that clarification.
So I was gonna ask if we can, before I make, limit this to just the rest of year-end money for 2025 and revisit the effectiveness of this program to use the next budget.
Oh, that's good.
This is
That's in there.
just-
Yeah,
This is just for 20, it doesn't say it, does it, that it's just for,
Not in the motion,
It says
no.
funding will come
so if
from
I'm gonna
20.
use it, I'm gonna add to the motion, I'm gonna ask for a motion effective June 16, 2025 to authorize town manager working with Economic Development and Public Safety Committee to establish as a pilot a small business micro grant program to increase the number of AEDs and potential other safety equipment in public places to use the remainder of the 2025 EDC budget.
Can I change it now or should I
You
just?
gotta do friendly amendment.
No, we have to do friends, so we'll have to
Well, can I
accept
do
it.
it before?
You can
Okay,
make a
then-
secondary motion.
So can somebody move that?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
I'd like to make a friendly amendment. Hold on, I forgot my friendly.
Call the question.
Simsbury sucks thing?
No. just the line item, that you had said that for the full economic development
The
line
remainder
item,
of the 15.
but we haven't used any of the 15, that's why I wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
It's the 15 that's in, so you
We're
budgeted
gonna spend
100.
15 grand on this grant?
He said
That would be potentially
I
like
thought it was
three-
5,000, when did it grow to 15?
Each one.
5 times 3.
Each unit is between 26 to 5,000 based on quick research.
Yes.
Are we still in discussion?
Yeah.
Yes.
Sort of.
Yeah.
So question for you is, for this to be effective, it should be in the places that have the most people.
Yeah.
So wouldn't the biggest businesses get the most logical place? So is it really that,
I already bought one.
are we just giving it to the biggest companies in town? Or
So
is it really
part of
for
the
everyone?
grant application form is kind of business hours as well. So I think part of it should be targeting businesses that are open the most hours, cause obviously they're not gonna be able to be used when it's closed. There isn't a set rubric yet of what kind of would be the most kind of heavily weighted in the analysis period. I don't necessarily know if maybe there needs to be, but I don't know if that would be kind of when the public safety and EDC members kind of meet to review applications, they could bring some of and say that they favor this because of that and make the campaign for one application over the other.
Yes, I think that's my thing against it is I feel like if this is somewhat subsidizing larger companies in town, it may not be the best use.
Okay, so
I would say that there's a bias toward people that are like you were saying, not at the office place. We're not talking about an
Right.
office complex. In my mind, we're talking about a public space or there's a
Place
you know,
where people
public
let people
use.
go.
And maybe there's a rubric or something that that a medical facility or a hospital could use as a reference for us. Curtis, I agree with you on knowing what would be the most effective place, cause there must be somebody who's devised a way to say, putting it here in the lobby is better than putting it in the break room or vice versa. I don't know what that is, but somebody might know what traffic and all that might actually be and be able to help with that. I like the idea behind this. I like the idea that it's a short-term pilot, that it's using funds that has already, available to us that currently doesn't have a home. And considering the circumstances that we're faced with, the large attention we have on public safety, and that we're doing the best we can to fund the ambulance, but can't fully fund 2 ambulances 24 hours. This is a great way for us to at least get a little bit farther down the road to helping to save somebody's life. I don't like spending money just like the next person, but this seems like an appropriate use for me.
And I agree with that. I also wonder though, would there be an option so for instance, the Simsbury Town Shops. So it's in the foyer, so it's maybe not in a specific store, but they all have access to it. Or, so if you look at different plazas that we have, and it would allow the access there for everyone in that space.
And part of the rollout was us going to work with our with the chamber and Main Street to kind of leverage their business contacts to let them know that this grant opportunity is available. So hopefully those kind of like the town shop owns that, or is that the same as Drake Hill Mall area, kind of whoever owns that, if there's a common area there, they would also be able to apply and encourage to apply.
I have a question. Another question is, how much town resources will we use to implement this program and at what cost?
So we don't see any significant impact there. We work with EDC, we'll work with PSC, we'll get the committee together. A lot of these questions I think are will be wrestled with by the selection committee, who will create the rubric for approval. That's up to them. We envision that be the planning director and 2 members of the EDC and the public safety committee. After that, once the devices are installed, the town's not maintaining it. This is a 1-year pilot. There's no continuing cost or impact. All we would look forward to is that, and I think we would require from the winners to notify us if they use it, right? We'd like to know and get some feedback on the,
Hopefully they don't.
Yeah, hopefully they don't.
The best outcome is an unused AED.
Yeah, what's the outcome?
Hopefully they have it
No,
if
you're
they
not.
need it.
They are,
Sorry,
right?
Ellen, sorry.
I know, but you guys, I know about AEDs because I've been trained on them. I gotta tell you something.
Yeah, I'm sorry, we don't usually engage with the
Give us a
audience.
no.
I understand that.
Okay, so you could send something after if you'd like. So the motion,
I still have some questions.
yeah, okay.
Did
Don't
you
all
do
the
your friendly
police-
amendment or no?
No, I am
Took it
gonna
away.
change it.
Okay.
Don't all cruisers have an AED in
I think
Simsbury?
most, maybe not all, but I believe that to all intents and purposes, yes.
Alright, so as you all might remember, I poo-pooed on the Chamber of Commerce getting this money because it seemed wasteful. This really seems a little, I don't know, random, and part of the purpose was explained to me that we would aggregate information on the businesses that applied for the grant, but I think a lot of information is there. What we don't have is aggregators. People we have a list of all the businesses. And I know one of the things, we have one at Antonio's, I made the investment, and honestly, I trained my staff. And that's one of the hurdles, is people that don't know how to use it won't use it. So just getting them out there isn't administering it. And the fact that they're in the cruisers and that this, I'll be honest, I was supportive when I thought it was $5,000. $15,000 is just too much money. At that point, it's taxpayers' money, and I would support a $5,000 grant. That's not chump change. I apologize for the term, but it's something we could just toss. But at $15,000, I gotta imagine if EDC was tasked with this, or perhaps Main Street, or even public safety, that we could get a bigger bang for our buck, for lack of another way. 15,000 is too much for 3 AEDs in the town.
Okay, I'm gonna just call a vote.
I would just say, Steve, if I could, the motion doesn't say 3. We've said 3 is just an estimate. You know, what we're asking the board for, respectfully, is just approval for us to create the pilot program and give this a try. And if we can get 5 for that price, I was on Facebook today and I saw some for $2,000. So I haven't been sold that they're $5,000 each either. But we're not asking for that level of approval or that level of detail in the motion. Nor are we asking for the board to set up a template by which the decision makers would approve the grant. We simply decided that it would be EDC, public safety, and the planning director, so we would provide that information. But we're not here to get into the weeds of the if we can get 5 of these, we're gonna get 5. We just want authorization to try it.
But we put the money aside for economic development.
And we've had a year, we've had a year.
So that's the question,
far.
so the question is this really economic development? And the motion's on the table, right? So I'm gonna ask for a vote, all the, right, did somebody,
I just have another I know you.
but we're in discussion, correct?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
This is a clarifying question, because if we turn this down and this $15,000 is not spent from EDC, they're coming up to June 30th, and that is where this money will then go to
The general fund.
the general fund for then
year.
use elsewhere. I just wanna clarify, is that correct?
It will go to the year-end save, to the year-end surplus.
To pay for the air conditioning.
Yeah, truthfully,
yes.
it's our money.
I just wanna understand, like, their money is gonna expire June 30th, the amount that we gave them. If it's not used and we don't approve or something, then, so is this gonna be out of this money now, or is this for
Till 25, the rest of this year.
the rest of this year, not for 26, not the money we approved for 26?
We would have to encumber it now. It's money that's expiring in a couple of weeks. And I would just add that the EDC, also a group of volunteers, supported it, and when we presented the concept to them, they were almost unanimously, you know, they didn't vote, but everybody wanted to try.
Okay, so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, Kevin and Heather. All those opposed say nay. Nay.
Sorry, Nay.
Okay, so that fails. All right, the approval of the minutes.
The donation from Simsbury
donation.
Main Street.
Oh, shoot.
It's okay.
It's been so long. I gotta find it now.
I don't know where I put it either.
I got a paper, it's not is it online? You have it, thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna ask for a motion effective June 16th, 2025 to accept the monetary donation of $2,500 from the Simsbury Main Street Partnership for the purchase of supporting the 2025 Juneteenth celebration.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, I'd like a motion to accept the minutes of May 12th.
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes of May 12th.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that's 5. Any abstentions? I abstain because I was not there. So that passes. And then there was a bunch of communications. I just wanted to call a little attention to some of these. The Age Friendly Community provided us this packet, but there's a lot in the action plan that requires funding. So it's for review and to bring back if we so choose to take up any of that action. The public gathering permits from Mark, I did have a question, Mark. Why do we say 45 days when we don't really use 45 days on the public gathering permit, and why isn't that shorter?
We can make it shorter, Chair, just let us know what you'd like us to change it to.
Because it never seems like it's 45 days, so why do we say that? The GWI is for July 1st. I'm assuming we have satisfactory performance reviews for all staff unaffiliated.
I think there's a few we haven't completed yet, Chair, but they're all underway.
Yeah, I don't know where it says that, but is that stated somewhere that I asked this last year. Somewhere it's stated that they're supposed to have one in order to get the GWI. Maybe Tom, you could send that to us and just to confirm. And then a note from the Charter Revision Commission, we had originally asked them to provide the first draft in August. That's not gonna happen. They're meeting tonight to talk about an extended timeline, so that's happening. The other is just my letter to CROG. And then the repaving schedule, which doesn't include my street, but the street that I'm off of.
It doesn't matter.
Oh, well, this issuance of the sporting licenses, I don't know if anybody, I didn't. Discontinuing, because you can get it through the state and other towns, so. Okay, and then as that, I'd like to ask for a motion to move to executive session pursuant to CGS 1-206B, pending tax appeal litigation for FF&W, LLC, to include in the meeting the Board of Selectmen, Town Manager Mark Nelson, the Deputy Town Manager Tom Fitzgerald, and Town Attorney Bob DiCrescenzo.
And Town Assessor.
And the assessor,
Who will be virtual.
who will be virtual.
Second.
First is the first, the second, but that's okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I'd like to take like a 2-minute recess to get some more water.
Kevin had already made.
For over 40 years, SCM has been the voice of our town,
Bringing us together through local programming,
education, and live broadcasts.
SEM isn't just about television.
It's about empowering our community,
ensuring our voices are heard during government meetings, and celebrating milestones
like our high school graduations.
But today, SEM faces a challenge.
Our funding structure is based on television subscriptions, and it's no secret, people have been cutting the cord.
With a shift to internet-only subscriptions,
SEM receives less revenue,
Even though all our programming is freely available online.
we need your support.
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 Your donation can make a difference.
It will ensure that SCM remains open.
Continues to educate our youth and keeps our community informed.
Thanks to SEM, I've been honing my creative skills, helping me work towards my college degree.
SCM is crucial for keeping our community connected.
SCM isn't just here to broadcast local events. They're actually preserving Simsbury's history.
Join us in preserving Simsbury's voice.
Simsbury's voice.
Together we can ensure that SCM continues to thrive
For generations to come.
Visit our website
Or scan the QR code on your screen to make your donation.
Every contribution
counts.
Thank you for supporting Simsbury Community Media.
where your town
Your schools
And your government come together.